Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto Vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Kiri, Humo, Suna, and Aiwa were a failure. At this point, I'm willing to choose anyone to avoid his wrath. Damn her and her demons. The figure, which was now revealed to be a man, visibly shuddered at the thought of being attacked by his wife's demons. Damn you, Kambi. Why is that? Why is that? Why should I be immortal? The man came out of his thoughts and his self-pity. Upon encountering two men who were supposedly guarding the gates of Konoha, the two guards were knocked unconscious. Then, the hooded man withdrew his hand from his rag or tan coat, formed seals with one hand, and fired a Sutin Miserapa directly to the face of the two sleeping guards. Mitos. What the hell? Stammered the guard with a bandaged nose. Huh? Asked the guard with the hair over the right. As they got up, our favorite hooded man watched them intently. The shorter one on the right, who spoke later, had brown hair with a fringe covering his right eye. He was wearing a Konoha itate in the form of a scarf. He was wearing Chunan's classic Konoha green bulletproof vest with matching blue shirt and pants. The tallest ninja on the left, who spoke first, had spiky, unruly blue hair, a bandage on his nose, and a small knob on the chin. He was dressed exactly like his partner. Oeo gozaimasu, my name is Izumo Kamizuki. Nice to meet you, said the shorter one, now identified as Izumo. I'm Katetsu Egane. What is your name and what do you do at Konoha? Katetsu asked, getting into business mode. I am the humble traveler whose name is Onomu Genryu. I am seeking asylum in the wonderful village of Konoha, Onu declared cheerfully. All right, then I'll call our ninja messenger to take you to the Okage. Which name would you like to register under? Izumo asked as his hand slid down to the earpiece that was lying idle in his ear. What a strange, but majestic name. I want to register as a citizen. That statement baffled the two guards. Why would someone who knew the Jutsu Sutin, and also with half seals, want to be a citizen? Izumo asked, stepping ahead of Katetsu. How did you know I used a Sutin just to wake you up? Onoro asked, completely unaware that he was still holding the same shark seal. You're holding the same sign, dude. Both guards said with a face it would be. Ha ha ha. Whether he laughed or not. Both guards shook their heads as Izumo pressed a button on his headset. Genma, I need you to accompany a guy to the office to sign the city documents. Izumo paused while waiting for an answer. Well, he's on his way, Izumo announced. Sure enough, as soon as she stopped talking, Gemma appeared among a swirl of leaves. Gemma Shiranui was a man very similar to Izumo. He was wearing the typical Chunin uniform, with her white scarf turned inside out. Like Izumo, Gemma had brown hair. However, this one did not cover one eye. Gemma's brownish-green eye met Onoro's reddish-purple squinted pupil. Gemma just nodded, and they both ran towards the location tower. As they were making their way to the tower, a smell came to Onoro's nose. Kitsune. But it seems that something has turned him off. This is interesting. Naruto's apartment, and while little Naruto, 5, was sitting in the living room of the incredibly atrocious apartment he owns. Naruto's tenant talks to him. Naruken, are you okay? Hi, Akane-chan, I'm just worried. Naruto frowns in anticipation. He hasn't always been able to talk to Akane. In fact, just a month ago she met the big emotional furry known as the Kyumi. Hindsight. Naruto lay beaten and mangled after an attack by a mob with civilians and shinobi alike screaming demon brat. And demon spawn of the Kyumi. As Naruto fell into unconsciousness, he found himself in a place he had never been before. Naruto and Naruto's mindscape was standing in an area that looked like a sewer, with broken pipes threatening to fall on our young hero. The waters roaring towards the blonde as they flowed. Naruto heard the soft sound of crying emanating from a corner of the sewer. Hello? Naruto shouted. As he approached, he saw where the sobs were coming from. He observed a beautiful woman in a light crimson kimono with foxes that seemed to move with sobs. Her lush crimson hair with orange tips formed a jumble around her, while 9 wonderful orange tails with yellow tips. Tears were flowing from her tailbone. Naruto blushed as he beheld the only woman who could match Kami in beauty. "Hello?" Naruto called again, this time in a whisper. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm just sad." The fox finally spoke, almost inaudibly. "Why are you sad? What's your name?" Naruto asked a little louder. "I'm a Kane, but you may know me as the Kumi. The room sealed me in you when he beat me. I am sad, because I am the cause of all your sadness, and the reason the villagers hate you. I understand if you hated, and do not want to be around a monster." Akane's screams were renewed with more force than the last time. "I don't hate you, it wasn't your fault," Naruto said as he comforted her. "Thank you, Naruken, but it's time for you to wake up, and thank you again for not hating me," he said. Akane said as she got up, wiped her tears, and one of her tails touched Naruto on the forehead. As he did so, a bright light emanated from the point of contact, and Naruto found himself outside again. The end of the flashback and, "Are you sure you're okay, Naru?" Akane insisted. "No," shout Naruto. "I don't want to be banished, but everyone hates me. I don't know what to do." Naruto sobs, his body torn apart by screams as Akane whispers to him. "Shotuto, Akane Nechin will always love you," as Naruto became more and more silent, and finally, she stopped crying. Akane smelled something. "Naruken, I'm flying to Dragon. Go get him, maybe he can help you. Dragons are lovers, not fighters. But when they fight, no one can compare to them, not even me," Akane whispers. "Hello, Akane Nechin." While Naruto was walking to the grocery store, he found himself completely surrounded by thugs. "Guys, look, it's the devil. To kill him!" a bully roared. As the screams of "to kill him" filled the air, Naruto opened his eyes wide and tried to run. But everywhere he went, there were thugs surrounding him. While a tear surrounded his tanned and mustached face, and the wind ruffled his beautiful sun-kissed blonde hair, the thugs advanced with difficulty and attacked. Streets of Konoha. When Ono finally left the office of the Okage, after a long time with paperwork, cries of "demon brat, killer of a fox born in hell," and "Kirib shit" reached his ears, along with the screams of a child. Ono's blood boiled and roared inside his body as he thought, "Damn it." Enora ran towards the sound of the child's screams and manic laughter. He swerved between buildings and obstacles to reach a scene that enraged him so much that the sky darkened in response to the great power emanating from the man. Ali, when the screams reached Ono's ears, and the leader of the thugs was raping Naruto, he would introduce his chosen member into the blonde one and withdraw it with quick movements, causing Naruto to scream in anguish. When it was over, each thug took his turn to rape Naruto, a total of 37 men and 4 women. After finishing, everyone took turns to cut the boy into several parts as the sky darkened. "Mom, why is the sky so dark?" "It's barely 4:30, a bully asked. The answer did not take long to come to them in the form of a 2-meter-tall man, with a long purple mane with red locks that reached to the middle of his calf. Her eyes were a purplish red, like her hair, with torn pupils. He was wearing a simple purple shirt with a red dragon engraved on it, and a purple scarf wrapped around his neck. Her arms were muscular and, like the rest of her skin, chocolate brown. He was wearing black pants with a purple belt and a black dragon-shaped buckle. He had small horns that protruded from the crown of his head, just a few centimeters above his hair. There was an aura of pure power around him. It was Ono Mugenryu. His lips parted as he spoke 6 words eloquently. "Cut with the claw of a dragon, Mugenryu," Ono whispered as she extended her hands as if wielding a katana. A katana materialized in his hands, which he unsheathed. A bright light shone as he uttered these words and unsheathed the katana. He simply disappeared, reappearing on the other side of the thugs, with his back to them, and sheathing the katana, bathed in a bright light. He uttered a simple sentence. "You heard that, didn't you?" The sound of the divine wind. When the last word came out of his mouth, and the katana guard touched the top of the scabbard with an audible click. Most of the thugs fell decapitated. However, the two main thugs had a different fate. The second in command dropped dead, cut into perfect cubes of meat, muscle, and bone. The leader of the thugs fell vivisected from the throat to the solar plexus like the animal he was. With blood-soaked organs spilling from his body, eyes and mouth open in a scream that was never heard. "Boy, are you okay?" Ono asked rhetorically. He watched as the katana disappeared, and the boy sat up. "Not really, bewitch," Naruto said before a large balloon of blood shot out of Naruto's esophagus and out of his mouth. "Shit, don't worry, I'll take you to the hospital." Ono's last words were to him as the boy collapsed unconscious. Konoe Hospital. "Someone come help this poor boy, he's dying," Noyo shouted, getting more and more angry. A nurse came to try and calm him down. "Relax, sir, we'll help you to end me. Yes, it's the QB demon. Doctors, come and help me kill him," the nurse shouted to get the attention of the other doctors. Luckily, they were busy and didn't hear her. "It doesn't matter, I'll kill the boy myself." By that time, Ono had had enough of the nurse's nonsense. "Shut the fuck up and help this bastard, or help me, Kambi," Onoro said in a low but threatening voice at first, but then he turned up the tone as he finished his threat. "I'm gonna gut you, you fucking piece of shit." The nurse almost took a shit out of the pent-up anger she was directing at him. "Notice I said controlled." The nurse nodded quickly and proceeded to heal the boy in front of Onoro. Or he didn't leave the village that very night. The next day, Naruto found himself in the office of the Hokage when the results of the vote for the banishment of Naruto were published. "Naruto-kun," Sarutobi's distressed voice came at last. "With a total of 72 in favor and 28 against, Naruto has been banished." A tear rolled down Sarutobi's eye as Naruto spoke. "It wasn't your fault, Sarutobi Gigi, don't beat yourself up about it." Naruto's sad voice came as he was shaking. "The doors of the Hokage, and ha 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 ha. We finally got rid of the QB brat," said the voice. Voice of the Ambu with chameleon mask. "Come on, demon." Finally, crystal-clear tears fell from Naruto's eyes as he ran away sobbing into the night. With the laughter of the Ambo as he passed through the forest. Forest on the outskirts of Konoe. Naruto ran through the forest at a speed that only a trained shinobi could match. While running, he tripped over a branch, flew into the air, and crashed into a solid object that landed on the ground. "Itai, Itai," he said the object. "He's the man who saved me." Naruto's tears became longer as her cerulean blue eyes met the narrowed purple-red eyes of her savior. "I'm Naruto. Nice to meet you." "Hi Ruto-kun. I'm Ono. Why are you here alone?" As Ono's words came out, Naruto's smile turned into a frown. He frowned and lowered his head. "I was banished for being a demon," Naruto accentuated, distilling all the possible hatred and disgust. Nor did Ono overlook the hatred. His eyes were shining with unbridled fury, and his face showed anger and a certain disbelief. How dare they? The pure hatred that emanated from those three words scared both Naruto and the birds in the area. "If you stop the QB from destroying that damn village, they'll banish you." Suddenly, the hatred and anger on his face disappeared, and a look would be replaced it. Even a kind of sweetness came over her eyes. "What is your dream, Ruto-kun?" Naruto struck a pensive pose. "I want to be the strongest ninja in the world." The tears from her eyes finally disappeared, and a look of determination appeared. Ono nodded, but his gaze betrayed something else, a little dissatisfaction. "Do you have any dear people?" Ono asked after a few moments. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw images of people flash through his mind. The image of a young brunette and her father, Ayami-chan and Toiki-san appeared. Then an old man in an Hokage suit appeared. "Fuck you." Next, an Ambo with purple hair and a Neko mask. "Yurugao-chan." Finally, a short-haired, black Ambo wearing a Karasu mask appeared. "Itachi-Nisan." Naruto nodded at the question. "Do you want to protect them, Naruto-kun?" He asked, not using Naruto's full name for the first time since they met. Naruto nodded again. "So tell me, young brood, What is your dream? Naruto was a little startled by the scream. However, a look of fire appeared in his eyes. My dream is to become the strongest shinobi, so that I can protect my beloved people, Naruto said. A faint smile lit up Ono's chocolate-colored face as she nodded. I will train you to become a shinobi. But first, a lesson about who I am. And no interruptions, please. Naruto nodded, and Ono continued. A dragon is a powerful species, superior to demons in every way. They surpass them in speed, power, grace, knowledge, and much more. Dragons use what is known as mana for their spells, or a much more potent version of the chakra. Mana is stronger because it comes directly from the energy of the soul. Dragon souls are divided into two parts, the spiritual manifestation and the physical manifestation of the soul. Dragons are stronger because each of these parts of the soul is applied directly where it is needed. Physical manifestation increases physical abilities, and spiritual manifestation of the soul increases the power of spells. That's why, even in human form, the physical abilities of bipedal dragons are 100 to 500 times higher than those of shinobi, even more physically capable. That's why his mana is 10,000 to 20,000 times more powerful than Yuki, which, as you know, is very powerful. Before your training starts, I will turn you into a 99% dragon and 1% human being. At this, Naruto slightly cocked his head. Why don't they make me 100% dragon? Naruto asked. Actually, for two reasons. Reason 1. I need to extract the Kyuubi. At this, Naruto seemed alarmed, so Ono continued. However, to do it safely, I must extract the Kyuubi from your human being. After all, the Kyuubi was sealed inside a human host, and if it turned you into a full-fledged dragon before extracting it, it would cease to exist. Reason 2. All dragons have an ability that allows them to manipulate the potency of the foreign energy in their system and transform it into mana, without changing the amount. In this way, I can give you all the chakra of the Kyuubi, while extracting his soul and body. Return him the Yuki equivalent to 4 tails, and he will be able to travel with us. Naruto seemed relieved instantly. However, you should know that when dragon's blood is activated in a person who is not a dragon's child, he is sent to a 1-month coma. So that the dragon's blood adapts to the new body, and the changes take place, he informed not Naruto. Oh, and since you currently have no family, I officially name you my son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Mugenryu. Naruto's eyes widened as he was shaking with joy, with tears running down his face. Suddenly, Naruto knocked his new father to the ground. Thank you very much, Tuzan. Naruto shouted as sobs of joy shook his body. You're welcome, Sachiko. Ono's gaze softened as Naruto cried himself to sleep. It's time for me to perform the ritual and transfix it. Ono's gaze hardened as she bit the finger, making it bleed. Her eyes shone with a deep purple and red. He drew arcane runes in the air in front of him with his bloody finger, and the runes spread out surrounding Naruto and Onoro. A bright flash flashed, and Onoro spoke at last. Transfer complete. The next morning, the new father and son duo found themselves in a clearing deep in the woods. Sochi, we will travel to the Big 5 nations for your shinobi training, and we will start with Kumo. You will disguise yourself as a human child. We're leaving tomorrow. Now, it's time for our next lesson. The two of them sat cross-legged, like applesauce, in the middle of the clearing. Dragons are classified by color and elements. But before I delve deeper, I must show you my hybrid dragon and human form. Ono got up and walked a few meters away from Naruto. Suddenly, a purple, red, and golden energy gushed out from his body, swirling around him. Soon, the enormous power went out, and a beautiful creature stood up where Ono had been before. Ono had the same size and facial features, but her reddish-purple hair and eyes took on golden highlights. Black horns protruded from under Ono's hair and curved outward like an inverted and lateral S. They rose 30 centimeters in front of his face and ended in a point so sharp that it cut diamonds. She was wearing a beautiful golden kimono, with red and purple dragons snaking upwards and with flames coming out of her jaws. She wore golden umbrellas over her shoulders, full of spikes. His pants were a deep purple that shone like scales, with a small bag that apparently contained only 2 curved daggers. At hip height, 2-meter odachi and 2-meter zambatos, somehow tied to the back. 8 gigantic wings of gold, red and purple adorned his back, while 2-meter tails extended from the coccyx, armored, and with spikes that ran them to the nape of the neck. He had 2 golden gauntlets with dragon claws attached to his hands and 2 reddish-purple bracelets attached to his forearms. Arms. Or did not shine with such majesty that it would put Kami to shame. Naruto just sat there, his face in shock, as he watched his father. "That's a lot of gold," he whispered. "Or I don't hate a surprise jump. As you can see, I am purple, gold, and red. The red represents my affinity with the flame and the control of the blood, as well as my mastery of the arcane arts. Purple represents my affinity with wind, lightning, nuclear energy, and plasma, as well as physical enhancements. Lightning represents speed, power, and durability. The wind represents speed, power, and flexibility bar agility. However, El Dorado is special. There has never been a golden dragon in history other than me. God, not Kami, chose me as his avatar, the one to fulfill his wishes. The gold represents infinity. It represents an affinity with everything, as well as with the arcane arts and physical enhancements. So my official title is Emperor Onamujin Ryugi Razel, Avatar of God, Ryujin, Dragon of Infinity. There are other colors in the spectrum of dragons, such as black, white, and yellow. Black represents fire and wind, but also a new hybrid element created from the union of wind and fire. This new element has 3 dinners: black fire, hellfire, and Zoriento fire. It usually has 2 forms, but with a fox demon turned into a dragon, this dragon can access the Zoriento fire. He also has access to darkness and a power and speed upgrade. White is also manipulation of wind and fire with the addition of light. However, the white does not take advantage of the malignant properties of the new flame, but its healing properties. Similarly, this flame has 3 buds: white fire, heavenly flame, and skunk fire. But don't get me wrong, white fire and heavenly flame can also be destructive. However, the wearer chooses what to burn, unlike black fire and hellfire, which simply burn everything. He also has a speed and power upgrade, but also a healing upgrade and access to healing arcane arts. The yellow is pure lightning manipulation with a speed boost. It's not very impressive. However, it has some light manipulation if you are strong enough. Or he didn't finish his lecture. Naruto's mind was stunned by the huge and continuous stream of information emanating from the dragon in front of him. However, he understood it. "Are we going to Kumo yet?" Naruto asked hopefully, to avoid more sermons. "Tomorrow we arch." In the blink of an eye, Ono's tails curled around Naruto and became entangled in the assailant's waist and arm, while a dagger was held over the assailant's heart. Change of plans. When humans bar unborn dragon demons are given dragon blood, it takes a death to awaken the new blood. Naruto's cerulean eyes opened wide at hearing his father's words, and opened even wider, if that was even possible, at observing the aggressor's attire. The man in front of me was wearing a chameleon-style ambu mask, and the 2 red bars on one side indicated that he was a lieutenant. He was tall and skinny, but muscular. He was wearing the standard ambu clothing and armor, including the both standard ambu. He had short brown hair, and his idiate de Konoha hung around his neck. The absence of a cut indicated that he was still a loyal ninja of Konoha. Naruto's gaze instantly hardened, and he withdrew the dagger that his father had given him. He was ambushing. There he was, next to the demon, but captive. The demon was ready to kill him. He wanted to use Kawarimi, but his faithful trunk was moving when this dragon demon caught him. And this thing was cutting off his chakra flow. So he did the only logical thing in a captivity situation like this: scream and beg. And that's exactly what he did. "Please, please, please, please don't kill me. I'll be a good dad. I swear. Please." Both Naruto and Nu sweated, but Naruto prepared the dagger. Using his now extensive vocabulary, thanks to the Kyugi, Naruto proclaimed his sentence. for attempted murder, as well as for the past transgressions that you and your squadmate committed against me, his sentence and death." Naruto's eyes flashed, and the hand holding the dagger over the man's heart descended, sinking deep into his chest cavity. Blood gushed out as the aorta and left ventricle suffered irreparable damage, and the man died. The blood inside Naruto was activated almost instantly. Naruto fell to the ground and howled in pain. "Don't worry, the pain will end soon," he shouted no above the wails of pain, shortly after releasing the Ambu, now dead. Sure enough, the howls turned into low moan, and Naruto slipped into a coma. Or he didn't walk through the forest with Naruto in tow and came to a small cabin that he had been using as a house. He went into the room he had reserved for Naruto and laid him on the bed. "I'll change the gravity to match that of my home planet, so he can train while he's in Ko." Or didn't he also apply gravity seals to Naruto's body, for when the boy woke up, he snapped his fingers and the runes flew off the wall, surrounding the boy, while a layer of mana prevented his body from being damaged during the weight shift. Or he did not look at the child for a while longer and smiled, thinking about his own son, and went to the kitchen to eat. 1 month later, and the Dragon Emperor was sitting in the room, while Naruto was moving, and his eyes half opened. The first thing the boy realized, when he opened his eyes, was that he could see much better, and I mean a lot. Without a word, Ono helped the new dragon to reach the mirror, while contemplating his new form. Naruto grew up, getting to be 1.45 m tall, a bit tall for his 5 years. Muscles were also lining up in her body, slightly hidden by her new outfit. Naruto was wearing a nice black shirt, with a white dragon snaking around his torso. He was wearing black jeans with an all-white belt. The legs of the pants slightly hidden in his new black and white boots. But her actual body changes were the amazing part of her little transformation. Naruto's blonde hair was now white with black highlights and fell to the small of his back. Like his father, 2 black horns made their way through his hair and formed an inverted S, which came out about 10 centimeters in front of his face. 2 large leathery wings, with black scales on one and white on the other, adorned his back, while a meter tail curled around his feet. The black and white scales intermingled along the tail, ending in a sharp arrowhead. Onoa felt approvingly. "You seem to have a strong affinity with wind, fire, darkness and light. It's awesome to get opposite colors. However, you still have the same amount of mana as chakra, which is Chun level in the middle. Therefore, it's time to extract Kyubi and give her 4 tails of Yuki, and you 9 tails. Mana tails." Ono took off Naruto's clothes, including his impeccable white underwear, and placed his hands over his navel when the seal appeared. Then he sang in the arcane language as the seal flashed and disappeared, and a 4-tailed Akane appeared next to him. Even at the age of 5, the already quite big member of Naruto began to hurg with the appearance of Akane. The problem is that he was completely naked and lying on his back, so Akane blushed when she saw Naruto's member erect, up to 7.5 centimeters. "Ready!" Onoro exclaimed. He helped Naruto put his underpants back on because his penis kept getting erect and they wouldn't fit. So Naruto took them down while Ono was taking them up and finally put them on. She put on the rest of the clothes while the trio went out. "Now that you've become a dragon hybrid, it's time to teach yourself how to fly, and, to some extent, to use your affinities. Can you feel the muscles in your back, Naru-chan?" Naruto cringed when his father used the suffix, chan, which didn't go unnoticed by Akane. "You will also feel the extra appendix near the tailbone, Naru-chan." He joked Kane in unison with honor. At this, Naruto visibly blushed, his tail wagged unintentionally, and his wings fluttered, creating a slight distortion in the air. As his extra appendages moved, Naruto opened his eyes wide as he realized what had just happened. "I moved them," Naruto shouted as he made the victory sign. Meanwhile, Ono and Akane were talking, but they stopped. "Did you say something?" The demon and dragon rulers spoke in unison. It was at that moment that Naruto exploded. "Damn you and your carefree attitude," he shouted to the heavens. Inside Konoha, a silver-haired Ambu, and a lycra-clad black-haired honey sneezed in unison. I think someone is copying us, Kakashi. What do you think? Lycra Honey asked. The Ambu, now known as Kakashi, simply kept reading the obscenity known as Ichika Paradise Volume 4 Special Edition with unreleased material, signed by Hariyama himself. Then he looked up. Did you say something, Geisan? Damn Kakashi and your cholera attitude. He shouted to the heavens. In the clearing, and Naruto finally learned to fly and struggle a bit with his tail. So the group decided it was time to travel to Kiri. Ono's 8 wings burst open with a huge gust of wind that knocked down half of the trees in the clearing. Akane and Naruto sweated like a drop. Or he didn't rub the back of his neck shyly. Akane shook her head as she used her affinity with the wind to twist the 9 fluffy red tails and take off. In another dimension, and a fox with 2 tails sneezed violently. A red echidna, a blue hedgehog, and a peach-colored rabbit. They approached the fox. Are you okay, Tiles? The blue hedgehog asked. Yeah, I'm fine, but I think someone copied me, Sonic, Tiles replied. Sonic nodded as the group headed back out in search of the 7 emeralds. About a mile from Kumo, and let's stop. Here. Naruto, in order to enter Kumo without being seen, I need you to remove the dragon trait. And the easiest way to do that is to simply put it back into your body. Akane-chan, and I will do the same, okay, Sochi. Naruto nodded, and did exactly as his father instructed. The wings crashed against his back, and finally disappeared, his tail retracted into the coccyx. His horns disappeared at the top of his skull. She also adopted more civilian clothes, as did her father and sister. Akane changed her hair color to platinum blonde, while Ono turned dark blonde. Naruto chose his old blonde hair color and hairstyle, and the 3 of them approached Kiri's door. The Kumo gates, and when the trio approached the gate, the guards stopped them demanding their names and countries of origin. Ohio, I'm Ono Uzumaki, this is my wife. Akane Uzumaki, and our son, Naruto Uzumaki. We traveled from the Iron Country because the civilian life there is not very interesting, and we did not want our son to become a samurai, but a shinobi. The lie came out of Ono's mouth naturally. His wife smiled, as did his son. The guards nodded, gave them the academy admission forms, as well as the citizenship forms to sign, and let them enter the village. In a week, Naruto would open the academy. A week later, at the academy, and Naruto and the rest of the class had finished presenting. To sit down, and they were choosing seats. Naruto looked around until he saw a dark-skinned redhead, a dark-skinned, black-haired boy with a lollipop in his mouth, and a rather tall blonde, for his 5 years, arguing. Of course not. I will become Honin, and I will be the Honin. Strongest in history. The red-haired man shouted. Mom, I think not. I'm going to become the strongest honey, so sit in a corner by yourself, Karui. The blonde laughed. The popsicle guy opened his eyes like plates. But Samui, Karui, what? It happens if they capture us and realize that Karui and I are the children of the Reikikage, and that you are the daughter of Yujito-sama, the most powerful Ambu that has come out of Kumo, then they will kill us, and our heads will be sent back to Dad, to Yujito-sama, and they will be so sad that when there is an attack on the village, they get distracted. They will bring and die, then Kumo will be destroyed, and the enemy will start attacking villages one by one. The boy was interrupted by Samui and Karui. Shut up, Omoi. They look like fun, I'll sit next to them, Naruto thought as he watched the scene. Hello, he said, startling the trio. Can I sit next to the 3 of you? They nodded and Naruto took a seat. Ironically, as soon as Naruto's butt hit the seat, a whirlpool of lightning appeared and Darui appeared. Hi, I don't mind any additional introductions that I missed, just. I will start the class by asking who knows what the chakra is. Everyone raised their hand. Darui noticed it and asked, who knows how to channel it? Again, everyone raised their hand. Great, now line up and take a piece of this chakra paper. Stand in front of me and I'll check your chakra affinities. Everyone formed a line with the paper in hand. Samu was the first. He channeled his chakra into the paper, and it began to wrinkle, even giving off many sparks. He screamed and dropped it. Lightning affinity, and very strong. Next. Karui was next and channeled her chakra into the roll. One half crumpled and gave off sparks, while the other side of the paper got damp. And a small but constant stream of water flowed from the paper. Wow! Strong affinities of lightning and water. Great! Next. Omoi did the same. Lightning. But when Naruto's turn came, the roll was split into 8. One piece became tied, another turned to dust, another crumpled and sparkled, another burst into flames. Another burst into black flames, another into white flames, another turned black, and the last piece turned white. Darui stood there dumbfounded, watching in shock. Naruto shook his head, and thought, this is going to be a long day. Darui shook his head to clear his head, and said, come see me after class, Naruto. I have something for you. Naruto nodded and leaned back in his seat. He has an incredibly strong affinity with all the basic elements. Black fire, white fire, darkness and light. This is crazy. I'll have to get a trainer for his lightning and water elements. I think I'll ask Hirabi to teach him. After class and Naruto, I should check the potency and the amount of your chakra, okay? Darui reported. Naruto nodded as Darui made a HAREM seal and a pale blue glow enveloped her. Darui waved his hand over Naruto's head and his usual obsidian eyes turned a bright blue. And they shone. Elite reserves Honen, and fuck. I have never seen chakra so powerful since Kushina Uzumaki came to Kumo. Naruto, you have a chakra that combines the Senju lineage of incredible power with the Uzumaki lineage of great power. I gather that you are the son of Kushina Uzumaki. She is the only one with such a powerful chakra, and it is because she is the daughter of the Shodai Myokai and Mito Uzumaki. You also have elite Honen level reservations. I will have a friend of mine go train you in the use of chakra, as well as your affinities with lightning and water, Darui announced. Naruto nodded, and so 6 months passed, but Naruto also trained with Akane and her father in a special training room. That was equivalent to a week inside. 6 months later at the academy, and it's been 6 months since Naruto started at the academy, and Naruto learned 2 things. 1. Time passes quickly when one is immersed in training. 2. The Kumo does not play. They expect you to have at least Genin level by the time you graduate from your first year at the academy. But Naruto learned a lot in those simple 6 months since he started at the academy. From Kirabi, Naruto learned the Ni-Toryu sword style, but the Kumo version. He also learned and mastered his human affinities of lightning and water, learning many righteous to go with them. Naruto now knew many righteous ranging from K, with 3 classes that he created himself. At this point, he was amazing at ninju. Naruto's growth rate, combined with the dragon's naturally accelerated growth rate, allowed Naruto to master Ni-Toryu and Toryu in a single week of almost uninterrupted training. He also learned the Goken, Reiken, and Mizuken taijutsu styles that originated in Kumo. Apparently, when Konoha defeated Kumo in the Third Great Shinobi War, the loot was several lightning and water ninjutsu, as well as the Goken style of taijutsu. He learned very little about movements from Darwin, but the power of these techniques more than compensated for the lack of variety. Naruto learned the techniques of the Black Lightning, a series of powerful lightning techniques created by the Sandaime Reikikage and transmitted to Darui, and now to Naruto. Naruto learned them very quickly, as well as creating his own. He knows a total of 23, 6 of them S-class. He also learned the personal style of Kenjutsu and Taijutsu from Darui, the Furious Lightning. This style was based on speed and agility, similar to the Reiken, but used the Black Lightning to increase its speed and power, and included moves that took advantage of the opponent's momentum to hit him with a force, devastating, using her momentum, her own pure strength. For Akane, Naruto learned to use his tail to attack, and to empower it with fire. He also learned several of her foxfire techniques thanks to her being inside him when he transformed into a dragon hybrid. He learned his personal style, the Zoro Fist or Kitsuneken, which was based exclusively on flexibility and power. It did not require incredible speed, as one simply curled around the opponent's taijutsu and kenjutsu, looked for an opening, and struck with the force of a freight train. Naruto's naturally enhanced flexibility, strength, and speed made this taijutsu incredibly devastating. Naruto also learned the claw version of the Kitsuneken, as well as a clawed version of the Hukin with some changes. 1. By using claws, and due to his transformation into a dragon hybrid, Naruto could naturally locate the location of the Tenketsu and the pressure points. 2. Being the fact that Naruto augmented his claws with mana, which, like the Yuki, is incredibly corrosive to humans, who are unable to handle that chakra power. Naruto was the one who learned the most from Ono. He learned several styles of kenjutsu peculiar to dragons, such as the Sword of the Dragon of Destruction, the Wind Dragon Dance, the Fire Dragon Dance, the White Fire Dragon Dance, and the Black Fire Dragon Dance. For the White Fire and Black Fire styles, these two elements can be replaced by the more powerful Heaven's Flame and Hellfire. He also learned the taijutsu versions of these kenjutsu styles, and they were quite effective. The taijutsu version of these styles consisted of channeling the elemental affinity of the dragon towards the limbs and striking with them, while performing circular movements to dodge and counterattack. It was based on strength, flexibility, and grace, jumping on attacks, connecting attacks that deal damage in a spiral like a Rasengan. One would simply turn and bend around an opponent's attacks, jump on him, and give him a spiral punch, inflicting almost direct damage to the entrails, almost without touching the skin. Naruto was also taught various dragon spells, or ninjutsu, for his affinities with dragons. In addition to mastering his physical enhancements, he also mastered the use of arcane healing magic, learning hundreds of low-level healing spells. Naruto also learned various kenjutsu and taijutsu techniques. His favorite kenjutsu movement of the Wind Dragon Dance was known as the Divine Wind. One would simply vanish from one side to the opponent, standing behind him while chanting this incantation. You heard him, didn't you? The sound of the Divine Wind. At that moment, the blade would slide up to the Tsuba with an audible click, and the opponent would simply be eliminated. He manipulates the wind around the opponent, similar to his counterpart, the true Mizuchi. Naruto was also taught the Munyo Jinpuryu, a style of sword that Ono learned during his life in the Edo period. He said that 3 were masters of this style: Muramasa, the blacksmith of swords, Red-Eyed Kyo, and Kyoshiro. Naruto also learned many techniques for this style. Only in kenjutsu, Naruto was easily stronger than 2 Kages, without using his characteristic techniques or styles. However, this is a fact that should be hidden for obvious reasons. Naruto's taijutsu was easily high level, maybe even enough to beat 2 mid-level jacks. His ninjutsu, without using dragon techniques, was of medium level, but with dragon techniques, he is easily able to beat the 5 Kages. Not to mention that his unfortified strength was so great that, after 2 muscle restraints, Naruto was still twice as strong as Tsunade of the Sannin. So Ono gave him 6 to reduce his strength to the level of a Chun in the middle. Naruto's speed was also Chun level in the middle after 6 restrictions, because without them, he was so fast. Maybe faster than the Irasen with only natural speed. He also learned Fuinjutsu for a few days to see how he was doing. At Naruto and Mizuchi's house, Naruto shouted. A huge cutting wind came and completely decimated the area. Again, Enoro barked. Another Mizuchi was created while Naruto was going through the dinners. Naruto's true Mizuchi was also a counterpart of the pure wind version, known as Divine Wind. However, Naruto's is imperfect, as he has not yet reached the realm of nothingness. When one has surpassed the limits of mind, body, and soul to achieve mastery with swords. Naruto currently uses an imperfect version of the technique, something Ono was trying to help him perfect. In fact, all the techniques that Naruto learned in this style were simply imperfect versions. The sweat was pearly and fell on Naruto, shirtless, as he executed the katas to perfection. But he still failed to perfect the technique. When he finished, he sat down to meditate while recovering his stamina and connecting with the energy around him. Something essential to reach the kingdom of nothingness. Come on, Tsuchidal, it's almost time to go to the academy. You should take a shower first, he announced. Or not from the house. Or I wasn't trying to help Naruto master the Munyo Jinpuryu, as it was much more difficult than the Munyo Seikyoryu, a style that Naruto already mastered, and being a dragon, he instantly regenerated the blood used for this technique, that allowed him to lose the advantage that made them forbidden. Naruto walked in and took a shower, completely rejuvenating, and heading to the academy, passing Akumo Chunin whom he greeted on the way. At the academy, and all right, everyone, and shut the fuck up. Instantly, the room fell silent, and the rest of the guys took their seats. Darui resumed his speech. It's the middle of the year today, so we're having a partial physical. We will try his kenjutsu for certain people, taijutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu. Everyone find a partner, Naruto, with me, because he's a little more advanced. Everyone chanted at Izensei. And they found their companions. Naruto faced Darui and started the taijutsu test. A blue ray instantly came to life around Darui and Naruto's feet and hands. Naruto grinned sarcastically and launched himself, starting the match with a low sweep that Darui effortlessly dodged with a backward leap. Recognizing the old strategy, jumping allows the user to launch himself upwards and make the first hit. Ch. Naruto clicked his teeth as he took advantage of the momentum of the kick to turn, get up off the ground, and lunge towards Darui. All without missing a beat. Darui noticed it by sliding the right leg back and turning the body to the side with the bent right arm, the left one, ready to block a possible kick. But the most unpredictable Kumo ninja did not kick, but simply took advantage of the momentum to jump over Darui, turning and throwing an amazing kick, fast that almost hit if Darui was in front of him. Darui dropped to the ground and counterattacked with a high kick that hit Naruto's small torso. Naruto backed up a few meters, using his own momentum against him. Naruto gritted his teeth and recovered in the air, landing crouched down. A black lightning bolt shook violently as Naruto covered himself with the powerful lightning bolt. Eerily similar to the ninja armor and the Reikikage, Naruto launched himself at breakneck speeds and launched a direct kick that would have pulverized Darui had he not dodged it. Darui lunged at Naruto and kicked back, landing a blow on the back of his head. However, when he felt that the boy did not fall, he realized that something was wrong, very wrong. Naruto had clung to Darui's leg and had spun, dragging him with him, and right at the height of the spin. Naruto hit Darui in the chest with a powerful kick, throwing him several hundred meters, ending the match. The lightning went out when Darui came out, quite battered, but with some pretty strong jolts. Good job, Naruto-kun. A great counterattack to my kick. It was fantastic. Naruto beamed at the compliment. Now, Kenjutsu's part, Darui turned to the rest of the class. Now it's time for the Kenjutsu part of the day, a Ajime. Naruto's eyes flashed dangerously as he pulled out an Orochi taller than him. Daru and pulled out a simple katana that flashed with a black lightning bolt. I must tell you that Kenjutsu is by far my best ninja skill. Sensei, be careful with me, Naruto stated in a threatening tone. Daru already felt, and came forward this time, with 3 quick and precise blows that crackled. Naruto just smiled, and dodged all 3 as if the punches were in slow motion, which, for him, was true. As he unsheathed his gachi, it was almost as if Naruto had become someone else. Then, he simply brandished his sword and shouted, Mizuchi. Naruto's sword flashed as hundreds of sharp, wind blades tore their way through the earth, bent on slicing Darui. Darui smiled smugly, raised his sword and shouted, Inazuma Senku. The lightning surrounding his sword flew in the shape of a lion, lashing out at the numerous wind swords that split apart. They were looking out for him. They collided, creating a huge explosion of energy. However, Darui did not realize that Naruto had rendered several of the swords invisible, and as a result, the previously invisible ones pierced through him. Darui opened his eyes wide as the wind swords, now revealed, opened 3 long and deep wounds on his torso, arms, and legs. He narrowed his eyes as he stuck his sword into the ground, performed several hand seals to activate a low-level healing jutsu, and waved his hand over his torso and the opposite arm. Then he repeated the process to heal the other arm and legs. However, he didn't realize that the wounds weren't healing until Naruto smiled smugly. Naruto waved his sword and turned it, preparing it for his next move. He ran from his place and attacked with his sword, and Darui raised his own sword to block the one with Naruto. But what came next surprised not only Darui, but also the students who had finished their fighting. Naruto's sword changed direction. The sword literally bent around Darui's to cut against his shoulder. But Naruto didn't stop, he continued to lash out with the sword and bending it around Darui's blocks, continuing his deadly dance. Soon, Naruto gave up and with one hand jumped away from Darui, landing on his feet a few feet from a heavily slashed Darui. The only thought going through Darui's head was, how the hell did he do that? This technique was known as the long sword dance, in the style of Munjo Seikiryu. A dangerous style, isn't it? It's a very powerful move, so if you want to surrender, you can, Naruto announced. Darui shook his head, wiped the shocked expression off his face, and he hardened his gaze. He stood up again as the black lightning enveloped his sword once more. This is the final movement, sensei. Yours, Yuryujin, Naruto declared as the surrounding water rose, forming several swirling water dragons, or Union-Dine dragons. Forming a wave that descended on Darui as he shouted, and Nazuma Sengmu once more. Naruto's face tightened with anticipation and the stress of maintaining the attack. The attack was turned off when the lightning crackled and faded away, and as soon as the lightning disappeared, Naruto stopped the attack and rushed towards Darui. The water receded, and Darui's unconscious body came into view. Naruto, seeing this, stopped instantly and smiled with sarcasm, proud of himself, while the other children watched him with incredulous expressions. Suddenly, Darui sputtered as water was forcefully expelled from his lungs and trachea. He finally regained consciousness and sat up, with a slight expression of disbelief on his face, but with pride running through his body. He was trying to get up, but the open wounds on his legs stopped him, as did the cuts on his arms, which prevented any attempt to lean on the ground. Naruto ran towards him as his sclera turned white, while the whites of his eyes turned red. Naruto muttered some of the arcane language and placed his hands, now shiny, on his sensei's chest. The wounds healed almost instantly. Darui stared with open eyes at the healing wounds. Well, it can be said that you passed the Kenjutsu exam, huh? And I guess you passed the Ninjutsu one too. Only the one of Genjutsu remains. Darui spoke to Naruto. The rest of the students continued at their own pace, being checked occasionally by the examiners. Darui put a soldier's pill in his mouth. It's time for the genetic test, Naruto. Naruto nodded as he formed the hand seals for a genjutsu. Nimpo. Akuma no Shokusu. Naruto shouted as numerous black dots opened up at Darui's sight. Then, several tentacles emerged from these black dots that enveloped him, restricting and constricting him slightly. Darui opened his eyes wide at the excellent use of genjutsu. While Darui was awakening his chakra, the tentacles slowly but surely faded away. Darui already felt a silent sign that it had happened. Very good class, they are all Genin-level ninjas at least low. I am very proud of you, but it is time for you to leave and return to your homes. Goodbye, Darui said, her body beaming with pride. At the house of Naruto, Ono, and Akane. As Naruto was on his way home, he saw his father approaching and stopped. Naruto smiled when he saw the seriousness on Ono's face. It only looks like this when it gives me new things to work on. Indeed, Ono was holding to small battle fanatics. The rest of the year will be spent perfecting old skills, learning the Mu-Oga and Onryu style, and using both the elements of darkness and light. Oh, and hello. Ono ended his speech with a cheerful greeting, which provoked that Naruto would throw himself on his face. However, Naruto nodded, accepted the battle Abanix, and prepared to continue training. 6 months later, and these 6 months had been great for Naruto. He had completely perfected his Kenjutsu styles, which Kirabi taught him, as well as Ninjutsu and Taijutsu. Naruto had mastered the Furious Lightning style that Darui taught him, in addition to learning all the Black Lightning techniques known to Kumo. He also completely mastered the world of Ironryu and the use of battle fanatics for this style. He mastered the elements of darkness, light, wind, fire, black fire and white fire. While he almost mastered the fire of hell and heaven. He learned tons of dragon spells for his elemental affinities, as well as mid-level arcane healing magic. Now he also adorned 2 meters Zambadus on his back and an Odachi sitting at his waist. The battle fanatics were in a bag in front of the kunai bag. Today was October 10th, Naruto's birthday, and hopefully, the first one he could have without being beaten almost to death. Naruto took a deep breath, left the house, and ran to the academy for the last day of academy, until January foremost. However, it was Naruto's last day at Kumo's academy. As Naruto took another deep breath, he entered the classroom for the last time. Darui escorted everyone to their seats. "All right, today is a very special day. Can someone tell me why?" Darui asked. Many students cocked their heads in confusion, but 3 raised their hands. "It's the birthday of Naruto Kumbara, Naruto," shouted a trio of blonde, red-haired and black hair. Naruto blushed and became invisible, as a certain Yuga heiress. The students understood when they turned to see Naruto. "Naruto turned 6 today. Congratulations, Naruto," Moi said smiling. Naruto nodded and smiled back at him. "I have a gift for you." Naruto opened his eyes wide. While Omoi presented his gift, the other students looked for something to give to Naruto, as it was customary. Karui, Darui and Samui instantly formed up behind Omoi. Her gifts were ready. Naruto opened the gift, and tears filled his eyes when he saw what was waiting for him. A beautiful black and white dragon pendant with an opal and a diamond greeted him. Naruto quickly thanked Omoi with a hug. Then came Karui. His gift was opened, and Naruto was literally on the verge of tears. When he noticed a beautiful blue kimono with intertwined dragons climbing up, splitting on its own or reaching the neck of the kimono. In this case, falling on both sides. Darui's gift was the solution. Naruto's eyes filled with tears as he contemplated a photo of him and Darui training. Samui continued to cry as the 6-year-old presented a drawing. Hand-painted of Omoi, with her lollipop, Karui, herself and Naruto together in the yard. She gave Samui, Darui and Karui a huge hug for their gifts, and smiled as the other kids offered their gifts and thanked them. Afterwards, everyone returned to their seats, while Darui returned to the front of the class to make their announcement. Unfortunately, today is the last day of academy, but next year, everyone will be with Kiraba-sense, and except one. Naruto will leave us, as he and his family must move on. However, Naruto, we will carry you in our hearts as you set out on your journey again. Many were downhearted, distressed by the idea that they would miss Naruto next year. However, they said goodbye with joy. Soon, a tall, red-haired woman, in a beautiful red and gold kimono, with kitsunes running down the hallway, entered the room. "Sochi, it's time to go," Akane said with a gentle smile. On the way to Kiri. As Naruto, Akane and Ono headed towards Kiri in their original forms, Akane's 4 tails, Naruto's head, and Ono's twin tails twitched. The silent message was transmitted. He transmitted between the trio. "Someone's here." Naruto immediately disembarked his terrified twins, while Ono and Akane dodged the cribs, and they flew from the treetops and embedded themselves in the ground right where the dragon and the fox were before. "Look, guys, we have a little kid and a couple with some shinobi training. Let's get them." A shinobi with an iway with a cut mark spoke as 4 ninjas revealed themselves. Ono and Akane narrowed their eyes and Akane said, "They are all yours, Naruto." Naruto nodded and jumped into action. He jumped up into the air, opening his Tsin twins or Warabanics, and landed right in front of his enemies. The 4 ninjas pulled out Kuna, and with both hands, and smiled in unison. Naruto simply put on his glasses as the earth around him rose, spinning around him in a kind of helix. The ninjas looked confused until one said, "Fuck it." And he jumped over Naruto, landing with his back to him, and threw his kunai at him. Naruto simply moved one of his Tizen, and a large piece of earth shot out backwards, at a speed much higher than the kunai, impacting against the ninja's chest, causing a stream of blood to come out of his mouth as he flew backwards, crashing into a tree. Meanwhile, Naruto skillfully caught the slow cradle and tapping the knob of his kessen, now closed, into the handle hole. The eyes covered by Naruto glasses were watching, staring at the opponents while swinging his one open T, almost slowly while uttering the words, "Happy come bullets." Suddenly, the speed of the fan accelerated incredibly, almost like a blur, while barely visible arcs of gravidons shot out. of the fan, deeply slashing 2 more ninjas, killing them almost instantly. 3 down, 1 to go, Naruto said almost wickedly. What happened to your bluster? The last ninja was trembling with fear, but somehow managed to get the hand seals he wanted. Katen. Gakakyu. A surprisingly impressive fireball shot out from the ninja's mouth as he pronounced the name in a trembling voice. The flaming projectile crashed into Naruto's earth shield, creating a slightly impressive explosion. The victorious smile on the ninja's face quickly disappeared upon hearing a faint voice. Crisis of the gravity ball. As the smoke cleared, Naruto was floating in the air next to him, and Naruto was standing with his palms together, with a huge ball of gravity floating in front of him. The ninja's eyes widened, and he turned to run, only for Naruto to throw the ball at his back. Naruto turned, grabbed and sheathed his Teizan, dropping the earth along with an explosion that rivaled that of the rank Nojutsu Karyuden. Naruto pushed the hair out of his eyes and resumed the genjutsu while snorting. How pathetic. Akane chuckled. Come on, we've wasted enough time here already, Akane announced. Naruto nodded, and the trio set off again, arriving shortly after at Kiri's gates. Are they becoming new citizens? The guard at the door asked. The 3 of them nodded instantly. The guard nodded as he handed them the registration documents. We want to enroll our son in the academy for the 2nd year, Honoro stated. The guard nodded and also handed them the papers. Today is the anniversary of the investiture of our Mizukage, so there will be a festival. The academy starts in 3 months, the guard informed them. Naruto's eyes lit up. Great. What are we waiting for? And Kyuzo. Naruto shouted, raising his fist. The 3 present chuckled under their breath at the antics of the young platinum. The guard nodded again and opened the door. Naruto sped through the door, with Ono and Akane walking slowly behind. Naruken. Let's go to the festival together, Akane said. Ono opened her eyes a lot. Wait, no, I want to go to the Aya festival. Ono shouted after them. Akane and Naruto smiled like vulpines and disappeared. Damn it, Akane-chan. Ono fell to her knees, turned into a chibi, and started crying anime tears. Nande. Nande. Ono cried even harder, so hard that the parents started to look at him. Strange, and to take his children away from him. The Okage Tower, and somehow, I feel that someone has been forced to do paperwork like me. I feel your pain, friend. I feel your pain. He thought an old Okage, while using a quick Guka cure to reduce his desk and his papers towards Mises. Okage-sama. The secretary of the Okage entered with 2 other assistants, all carrying piles of papers almost 2 meters high. We thought you'd need copies of your papers in case any of them got lost. However, as we didn't know which one we might lose, we made copies of all of them. Ah. And here's the new paperwork too. The secretary announced as her stack of papers swayed. No. Sarutobi shouted to the sky. Nehan Av? Did you hate me, Kami-sama? Suddenly, Sarutobi whispered. I won't let him conquer me, no. Sarutobi went to the window and jumped out. I love me. Sarutobi's voice trailed off as he flew out of the 6-story tower. The secretary and the assistants sweated a drop. You cannot resign, sir. You have not chosen a successor. Kuso. Sarutobi shouted as he magically appeared at the window once more. Back in Kiri. Meanwhile, while Ono kept complaining about delayed wives and rude kids, Akane and Naruto were having a good time. It was a civilian festival, so they had on cheap imitation ninja games. However, they both had a great time. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw a ball-throwing game. She immediately flew at him, with a cane goat in tow. He stopped right in front of the carny. 10 Rillo for 3 balls, boy, said the carny, looking to get easy Rillo from the boy. Sure, Naruto exclaimed as he handed the money to the carny. The carny gave him the 3 balls, and watched intently as Naruto held one, examined it for a few seconds, and threw it. The Feriante's eyes popped out of his sockets, like in a cartoon, when the ball not only hit all the targets, but continued along the back of the cabin, burning up. The Feriante was silent for a moment, grabbed a wolf, a fox and a stuffed dragon, and handed them to Naruto. Then, she fainted. Great! I won the game. Did you see that, Akane-chan? Naruto shouted, jumping up while miraculously keeping the 3 stuffed animals perfectly stacked on his head. Akane shook her head with a mocking smile. The duo advanced in the games, winning several awards. Soon, the festival was over and the duo returned home to prepare for Naruto's first day at the academy. In the apartment, and when the tough guy arrived at the apartment, what they saw was Onoyo, red-eyed and very sad, working like a slave to finish the paperwork, while grumbling to himself. I'm a dragon, I shouldn't be subject to this, he grumbled. The tough one finally got noticed very rudely. Akane slapped Ono with her 4 tails as he flew like a cartoon through the wall to his left, while Naruto came up to him and slapped the poor dragon. When they finished, Ono plunged into blissful unconsciousness. Stupid retard, Akane murmured. Leaving the 3rd member of the trio sleeping on the studio floor that night, the duo fell asleep in their comfy beds. The next morning and at the academy. When he arrived the next morning, Naruto had eaten dinner and was crossing the academy for the first time in Kiri. Let's remember that Naruto is still short, so he's a little shorter than the rest of his class. So even though he is 1.45 m tall, his peers are easily 1.40 m tall. 2 gigantic boys approached Naruto and pushed him outside before he could enter the classroom. He looks like a recently turned 7-year-old. Time for the initiation, Kai's, said the older boy. The other boy, Kai's, made a sneer and engaged in basic taijutsu practice for Kiri. But the sneer disappeared instantly when Kai's realized that Naruto wasn't chickening out in the slightest. In fact, he looked bored. This made Kai's furious, so she pounced on Naruto, with her meaty fist threatening to crush him. Naruto narrowed his eyes, and just touched the fist with 1 finger, stopping it completely. His finger didn't move at all. It was one thing to have a punch, but quite another to have it completely, leaving him motionless. Naruto then moved his index finger to the top of the boy's fist, added 2 more fingers, and moved his thumb to the front. Then, he pressed the top of the guy's fist with his upper fingers and said, "Kneel down." Kai's collapsed instantly, prey to the intense pain, while screaming in anguish. The other boy opened his eyes wide as he watched the scene and tried to pounce on Naruto from behind. Naruto simply turned 90 degrees and reached out his hand to hit the boy's forehead with a quick movement. The boy flew out backwards, crashed into the wall, unconscious even before touching the ground, leaving a crater on the ground and a footprint on the ground. The wall. Naruto dealt the other boy a setback, suffering the same fate as his partner. In the city of Tanzaku, and on the outskirts of Tanzaku, 2 women who were leaving the village suddenly stopped. The one on the left, a tall blonde with pigtails, brown eyes, fair skin, and a small blue diamond on her forehead, was wearing a gray kimono-style blouse with a bluish ovia to hold it, blue pants and a grass arriver with the exchange of gamble on the back. She was Tsunade Senhu, a member of Densetsu no Sanin and a powerful healer. To her right, a woman of medium height, with black hair, dark brown eyes and light skin, was wearing a bluish-black kimono with white trim and white obi to hold it, and to finish off her outfit, she was wearing open heels. She was Shizune, Tsunade's apprentice, an accomplished physician and honin of Konoha, and the nephew of Tsunade's late lover Dan. In her arms she carried a small pink pig that growled when its master stopped. Suddenly, Tsunade sneezed violently. Then she sneezed violently again, this time with much more force, so violently that snot and mucus came out of her nose, covering her blouse with a green layer. Shizune's eyes almost popped out of her head as she watched the show. Shizune let go of the pig, Dumbass, and started laughing out loud. Dumbass also grunted and rolled on the floor. Shizune let herself fall to the ground, tears welling up from her eyes as she collapsed, laughing. Tsunade turned red as she tried to wipe herself with all her might. "Stop laughing at me, damn it!" Tsunade shouted. "You're hehe right hehe, it's not hehe funny hehe," Shizune said, trying, unsuccessfully, to stop laughing at his sensei. "Oh, what a joke! It's hilarious! Ha 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 ha!" Tsunade left. Wait, hey, up, lol. Shizune stumbled after her, still laughing. Dumbass was rolling after them, growling. Back at the academy, and, while Naruto was wiping the dust off his hands, he returned to the academy. All eyes fell on him as he entered class wearing his trademark black leather jacket, a black polo shirt with a white collar, and black and white dragons intertwined. He was also wearing black boots with white jeans instead of the black ones and a pack of ninja tools on both legs. "Anyo, who are you?" the teacher asked. "Mugenryu and Mugenryu Naruto." "Ajime Mazite," Naruto said as he took a bow. "Sensei, maybe I want to get back the two boys who threatened me and who are now embedded in the walls outside. I'll sit down." Naruto walked to the third row from the front, sitting right between a young man with long black hair, who possessed the most beautiful face ever seen on a man, and a boy with sharp teeth protruding from his upper lip, who he had blue hair and acute. He was wearing black square glasses. "Oh hey, I'm Chojiro." The blue-haired boy spoke to Naruto. As he was talking, Naruto noticed that all of his teeth were sharp. "And I'm Aku," the boy next to him said stoically. "Hello," Naruto said simply with a smile. "Okay, everybody. Take it easy. For those of you who don't know, I'm your Yao sensei," the blue-haired young man said. "Now, to start the lesson," and Naruto rested his elbow on the desk and his chin on the open palm, while sighing. End of the day at the academy, outside the academy, and while Naruto was walking home, he ran into a very tall man. -03M. She had long brown hair with two bangs that fell in front of her. She was wearing a short black kimono with gold trim and a white obi holding it. He was wearing gray trousers, black sandals, and two short swords sheathed at the waist. "Gomen, Mum, you seem strong. Teach me Kenjutsu Nagari," Naruto requested as he observed the outfit of the ninja in front of him. "Don't you know who I am? I am one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Raiga Kurasuke. But I like your boldness. If you can beat me in an arm wrestle, I'll teach you Kenjutsu." Raiga scoffed. As the crowd gathered, an unknown Chunin put a table in front of them and 2 chairs under their butts. A lot of people were muttering things like Raiga is so cruel. No kid can beat him in an arm wrestle. Hell, no one in the fog can with him, and Raiga is going to crush that kid. I feel for him. However, Naruto was not discouraged in the slightest. He put his small hand around Raiga's huge hand and rested his elbow on the table. "Ready." "Ahime," some random civilian shouted. Naruto hardened his gaze and clenched his fist as the contest began. Raiga smiled sarcastically and started to push, but the smile faded as he realized something. Naruto's fist was not moving. This time, Naruto smiled sarcastically as he pushed Raiga's fist, slowly tipping the scales in his favor. Soon, Naruto let out a scream and hit the table with Raiga's fist. The silence and tension that permeated the air could be cut with a butter knife. Then, suddenly, they vanished as the crowd erupted in cheers. Naruto let go of Raiga's fist as he stood up and spoke. "Will you teach me now?" "Yes. You won fairly," Raiga said. "Get on my shoulders. I'll show you where me and the rest of the fog swordsmen trained. Every day, after the academy, I want you to come here to train with the 7 swordsmen of the mist in water ninjutsu, taijutsu and kenjutsu. Beating me in arm wrestling is amazing, so I give you a little more in our deal, boy." Naruto looked at him with wide eyes, before nodding and jumping on Raiga's shoulders. Raiga ran towards the secret training camp of the 7 swordsmen. Training Camp 48, exclusively for Naruto, and the swordsman, and Sugoi. Naruto exclaimed with a twinkle in his eye. In front of Raiga and Naruto, there was a big shimmering lake with a waterfall. To Naruto's left, there was an extensive wooded area that seemed to be used for stealth and hunting. To his right, there were training stands in front of a large villa-style house that was located on the boundaries of the training ground. Get used to the view, Gaki, because you'll be here every day until you leave or graduate. Raiga smiled smugly as he put the boy down. "Who's here?" 6 pairs of feet clanged against the ground as the remaining swordsmen appeared, swords drawn. The voice belonged to Mahesamzuki, the wearer of Irimika. Manhatsu, this is, Raiga scratched his head sheepishly. Manhatsu shook his head and pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Mugenryu to Jaimasite. Naruto made a bow. Manhatsu and Kisame narrowed their eyes while the remaining four nodded approvingly. What style of kenjutsu do you know? Kisame asked, narrowing her shark eyes even more. Naruto also narrowed his eyes. But then he smiled. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, you do. A kid like you wouldn't have been able to beat Raiga in an arm wrestle if you didn't have a shred of kenjutsu training, Manhatsu shouted. You understood it quickly, Manhatsu Mizuki, bearer of the Namakare, Kijime no Sairai, and unofficial leader of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. And you also got it Kisame Asigaki, wielder of the Sumeda, Kirigakure no Kijin, beast with a tail without a tail. The second most powerful member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. However, my farce was not rude. Naruto spoke with a disturbing voice. His voice resonated with sincerity, but also with mystery. You seem very polite for a 6-year-old gaki. The man furthest away from Manhatsu spoke, to his right. The man had brown hair, with his white scarf over his head, and a brown bun stuck out. He looked at Naruto with his gray eyes. My dad was very insistent that I study the bingo book. But I was promised training. And I assure you, I have no ulterior motives, Naruto said, still leaning over. Raiga was glad to hear this and took the time to introduce them all, as Naruto seemed to already know the names of their swords. 10 minutes later, and very well, since you've had kenjutsu training, let's see what you've achieved, Gaki. Hinin said. Hello? Naruto stood his ground. Ma, I'm not going to test you, Gaki, someone else will. You seem confident. I am. Naruto whispered under his breath as he ducked and spun on his heels. His katana detached from his wrist and his sword rose to meet the much larger Sumeda. Kisame opened his eyes wide for an instant before letting go of Naruto's sword. They both shot back, and Naruto shot much further back than Kisame. Heh, that was all Kisame said as he lunged at his new apprentice. Naruto also lunged, instinctively adopting the furious lightning style, with black lightning already detaching from the sword. Everyone in the surroundings stood there shocked as Naruto matched Kisame move for move. The lightning was constantly replenished while Sumeda stole the chakra. Angry lightning. Naruto shouted as the lightning around his sword intensified and consumed his body in a black flash. Naruto turned towards Kisame, while only seeing a black spark. However, somehow, Kisame dodged the attack and scratched Naruto's side with his sword, knocking him off course, and sending him straight to the ground. Everything was completely silent, while the seven swordsmen, except Kisame, who was smiling after a good fight, remained dumbfounded. Manhatsu's eyes sparkled as he understood the pure talent of the boy they were going to train. I think that's okay for today, Manhatsu said. Naruto got up and shook off his clothes. Oh, I wanted to fight some more. But I guess I'll be able to fight tomorrow, so Jane. Back at the apartment, and where were you? He asked Kane as soon as Naruto returned. Training with the seven swordsmen of the mist. I want to train with my father. Where is he? In the studio. Are you learning to drive a Zanbatsu? He asked Kane. We probably did nothing but train today. But since no one in the seven swordsmen uses a katana, I will surely learn to use a long sword, a short sword, and a Zanbatsu. Naruto replied as he unpacked the rest of his swords and settled on the couch. Interesting. I'll get you something to drink. Would you like some tea? Naruto nodded. He's making you 2 twin swords, you know. Some just like yours. But smaller, of course. Akane chuckled. Great. Naruto answers. I'm going to the studio right away. Call me when the tea is ready, Hane. Naruto ran down the stairs. Akane shook her head. I don't know where he gets all that energy from. With Naruto, he had arrived at the Baraforia studio in time to see his ebony-skinned father finish cooling the 2-meter swords. He watched as his father chanted a spell that effectively used his own swords as a model to forge them from Naruto. Pachakudo, your swords are almost ready. I have imbued them with my magic so that they grow at the same pace as you. Ono put down the hammer, took off his glasses and gloves, and sang once more. The Testel. He yelled at Kane from the kitchen. Damn, that's for me, and thanks for the swords. Maybe when we're done, we can train a little tonight. Naruto smiled warmly. His father did the same. Boy, now go drink Akane-chan's tea before she gets mad. I'm not angry. Akane shouted from the kitchen, while a frying pan that somehow curved from its position in the kitchen was thrown at Onaro's head. Somehow, he hit the mark. Ono's eyes filled with laughter as he fell to the floor, asleep. Baka, Naruto snorted as he made his way to the kitchen, the great swords still in the forge, though everything was turned off. In the kitchen, Akane was putting the dishes on the table when Naruto turned the corner and headed to the table. Akane smiled while the rolls were on the plates and put a cup of tea in front of Naruto. Thank you, Akane Nechin said as she crossed her left leg over her right and took the cup of tea to her sides. Akane smiled with a suffix, but arched an eyebrow at the new suffix. What caused the change of the suffix, Naruken? Akane asked while also raising the cup to her lips. Hey, I just thought you were more of an angry sister than a simple girl to me, Naruto said. With stupidity. A huge Oni mask appeared behind Akane as her hair caught fire. Would you mind repeating it? Akane whispered menacingly. Hey, not really, and I'm leaving now. Naruto was sweating as he disappeared. No, you won't. Akane screamed as she extended her tail and grabbed Naruto by the leg as he tried to leave. Damn it, somebody help me. Naruto shouted while the author laughed wickedly. The next day, Gaki. Ono called from the kitchen. Or he didn't shake his head when he didn't get a response from Naruto. She went upstairs when a mischievous smile appeared on her face. Hey, he chuckled as he ran downstairs to the kitchen. He grabbed a huge bathtub, filled it with ice and water, and ran upstairs, miraculously without spilling a drop. He sneaked into Naruto's room and whispered, wake up, Naruchan. Getting no response, Ono dropped the tub of water and ice on top of Naruto. Ah, replied the soprano. Don't forget to go to the academy and train with the 7 swordsmen. Those were Ono's last words as he fell into a painful unconsciousness. Academy, and as Naruto was happily walking through the door, Chojiro stood up to greet Naruto. And an eyebrow was raised up to his hairline as he watched Naruto. Walking through the door with a vulpine smile, wider in fact, than the legendary smile of the Cheshire Cat, Nbara. As impossible as it sounds, but hey, this shit is fanfiction. What the fuck did you expect? What makes you so happy, Naruto-san? Aku asked, approaching Chujiro. Okay, the two of them moved closer as Naruto beckoned them to listen, it's a secret. The ground shook as even the eternally stoic Aku was stunned. Naruto chuckled and took a seat as the sensei entered. All right, everyone to your seats, Ao said. Now, to start the class, Naruto sighed and got ready for an intensely boring day. After class I, when Naruto left the academy, he saw Raiga and Chojiro waiting for him. As he approached them, he adopted a puzzled look. Why is Chojiro here? I'm here because I was finally accepted as a Manhatsu apprentice and as the next Iramakare bearer, Chojiro said enthusiastically. Naruto smiled beaming, and his smile reflected his white teeth. Congratulations, Chojiro. I guess that means you'll be training with Magetsu Nizen too, huh? Yes. It's going to be a lot of fun. But Raiga-sama told me that training is going to be hell. Do you really think so? Chujiro replied, a little worried. Yes, training is very difficult, but very fun. Come on, Raiga-nisan. Raiga chuckled at his new suffix. Sure, Gaki, come on up. Raiga extended his arm for Naruto to jump, and then deposited the silver and black-haired boy on his head. Chujiro was led away on horseback as they ran towards the swordsman's training area. Training Camp 48. The trio arrived as the remaining swordsmen left the house. Naruto jumped out of Raiga's head and pulled out his katana and his controllers. He placed the controls to the side and strapped the odachi to his back as he left with Zabuza, Kisame, and Chumchkram on the right, while Manhatsu left with Shujiro on the left. The remaining swordsmen drew their swords and started a pitched battle in the middle of the training ground. With Naruto. "All right, boy, let's fight," Kisame said with a menacing smile. Naruto smiled back, unsheathing his sword, Ryuim, and lunged at Kisame, even before Samara fully unsheathed it. Kisame opened his eyes wide at the boy's speed. He jumped over Naruto and unsheathed her. Completely before engaging in combat, he threw a wide blow so powerful that it lifted him into the air. In midair, Naruto managed to do a backflip and straightened up, landing on his feet to prepare for the next match. He adopted his furious lightning style, with a black lightning saturating his black, and unleashed his technique, Inazuma Senku. The black lightning flew out of his sword in the form of a large lion, which Kisame quickly dodged by lunging at the motionless boy. Naruto waited until the last second, when Eve's lightning didn't completely envelop him, and screamed, "Angry lightning!" Kisame opened his eyes wide as he remembered the move from his last fight with Naruto. "Shit," Kisame muttered, with no time to dodge or even swing his sword to absorb the chakra, and Naruto slammed with all his might into Kisame's tall blue body. "Phew!" he exclaimed as he flew out, sliding along the ground and landing sharply, completely unconscious. Naruto dispelled his lightning and sheathed his sword, while receiving nods and applause of approval. From then on, the days became quite repetitive for Naruto. He would wake up, get dressed, go to the academy, and then accompany Chojiro and Raiga to the training camp. This continued for about 8 months, until the 7 swordsmen of the mist declared that Naruto's training was over. Naruto had already mastered the techniques of water and ice, thanks to the fact that he had found a Kori clan trainer to help him master ice manipulation. He mastered the use of Zambadis, sword sticks, long swords, and wide swords, such as the Kubikirim. In the apartment, and when Naruto came through the door, Ono approached him seriously. "It's time to go," Ono said. Naruto opened his eyes a lot, but he sent a note to his friends, and Ono and Akane packed everything. "I already told Mizukage that we will be back soon, so we can leave without being considered traitors." Naruto nodded, and the trio left in silence. "On the way, and we left 4 months before, Tuzan." He pointed to Naruto. "Yes, it's because I want you to learn something known as the Shikigami dance, in which you turn yourself and your clothes into millions of pieces of paper that you can control at will. It is also a style based on origami. To attack your enemies, even going so far as to create paper wings, paper hurricanes, and even paper golems with different paper elements. However, I have to take you to aim for this. Since I can only allow you another 6 months in the water country, including the summer, I had to bring you here immediately. Anzo and Conan, from whom you will learn, are good friends of yours. And Anzo is willing to give you the Salamander contract in 18 months, unless you want the European Dragon contract of mine, the Akane Foxes, or any other contract that you can find it," Ono replied. "Can I sign more than one summoning contract?" Naruto asked. This time, it was Akane who answered. "Yes, but only if the heads of the summoning contract agree. However, I'm the head of the Fox contract, so I'm fine with any other contract you want to sign. Even if I agree, that doesn't mean you can automatically summon, since both bosses must agree before signing 2 contracts, but if they are, in theory, you can sign any contract you find." He gave him a talk before Naruto nodded, satisfied. At the gates of Aim, and the trio finally reached the gates of Aim, but before they could enter, the trio ran into 2 men. "Stop and say what you have to do." Enaro chuckled at the usual protocol. "I'm honored. This is my son Naruto, and my wife Akane. We are here for 6 months to observe how AIM works and train with a friend. Is he anxious?" The guards opened their eyes wide as they listened to the introductions. Both nodded at Ono's question and accompanied them inside the village to the Tor del Amici, in Ibarra. I do it because only the leaders of the 5 big hidden villages are officially called cages, so the title Amici is just a formality. And a sign of respect. At the tower, Anzo was about to summon a salamander to soak up the paperwork he had, even though it wasn't even an official bag. When his secretary told him that there were 3 people waiting for him. Have them come in. He spoke in exasperation. However, her spirits soared at the sight of the guests, one in particular. Enoro, old friend, how are you? Or he didn't piss between his teeth at the radical change in mood. All right, Anzo-kun. This is my son Naruto, and my wife Akane. The 2 bowed at the mention of their names. Fine. Well, not that I'm ungrateful, but what brings you to my humble abode? Anzo asked. Ono's mood became more serious. We are here to train. I would like Naruto to train with Konan, and for her to teach him her dance of the Shikigami fighting style. So that Naruto not only gets stronger, but also transmits the legacy of this fighting style. Sure, so when will the guy decide on his summoning contract? In a year. After his trip to Iowa, Naruto will have decided, as he will probably have more information about the summoning. Akane intervened. Anzo felt. All right. Konan, come on. He screamed. A beautiful pale girl in a simple pale blue kimono entered. The kimono had small origami cranes and was fastened with a monochromatic white belt. He was about 1.68 m tall and had short blue hair. He had piercing gray eyes with blue shadow. Under the lip, she wore a small pearl piercing. Oh shit. You don't have to scream, it was right outside the door, Konan said. I heard everything, and I'll teach Naruto-san. But I'm warning you now. I am a slaveholder. Naruto nodded. When do you want to start? Naruto asked, staring into her eyes. His vibrant blue met her dull gray. Then, she smiled maliciously. Now! He screamed, and his paper riches flew out of his long sleeves, almost hitting Naruto, as the 2 of them ran out of the tower. At the training camp, and while Konan was chasing Naruto, he somehow chased him to the training camp they wanted to be at. Okay, Konan said as he stopped chasing him. I will teach you the Shikigami-style dance. First, place a layer of non-elemental chakra on your body, imagine it as paper, and then absorb the paper back into your body. Then your skin should turn pale and start peeling like paper. Naruto obeyed, and the effects were instantaneous. He felt the skin peel off and float around him. Kanana felt approvingly and spoke again after Naruto grabbed her. The trick, and he could turn his body into paper in an instant, almost instantly. Then, project your chakra and shape the paper until it looks like a kune. Then, throw it to me. You will find that this technique, the paper kune, is much sharper than a normal kune. In fact, almost the same as one infused with wind chakra. A few hours later, and while Naruto mastered the technique, Konan mercilessly continued his training, already ordering him to do the following technique. The following technique is called paper chakra. In this technique, a paper disc is formed, sharpened. The edges and the chakram is thrown at people who will spin at an incredible speed. This technique surpasses that of wind-enhanced cribs and shurikens, and it can even spin so fast that, by throwing the chakram against a wind-infused crib and shuriken, it can easily pass through them, without stopping or staggering in the slightest. Try it for a few days until you master it, and then we'll move on to techniques like the paper clone, the paper golem, the paper golem army, and my ultimate trump card, the god paper person technique, in which billions of tags are released. Explosive, fire, lightning, water, earth and wind emitting tags, and poison tags in a giant trench, where they explode continuously for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much chakra I have left that can be used to generate billions of labels. All right. Konan ended the lesson with a question. When she got the nod, she nodded to and then left, leaving Naruto to his fate, one would say. Or just letting him practice that technique. 6 months later, yes. The final battle between student and teacher was taking place as Naruto fought and attacked Konan, with paper shurikens coming out of his sleeves. Konan dodged, and she sent a paper crane at breakneck speeds towards Naruto, but the paper quickly flew out of his sleeves and formed a barrier that efficiently protected him. Although Konan was proud that Naruto was doing so well, he wasn't holding anything back, so he took advantage of his lack of vision to materialize his paper wings and activated his technique. Shikigami dance. She screamed, flapping her paper wings. A tornado of shredded paper formed and rushed towards the barrier. He went through it, but found that Naruto was no longer there. Suddenly, he heard a scream. Katten. Paper golem. A giant golem, twice as tall as her, ran towards her. The fire seals were evident on him. Konan remembered when Naruto discovered this ability. Kinjutsu. Flashback to just 5th month of training, and Naruto was training at dusk with Konan and experimenting with the types of paper he could use. With the paper ninjutsu, he tried to incorporate a fire-emitting seal into a piece of paper and used his paper skills to replicate it. Konan suggested incorporating it into some kind of golem. Naruto opened his eyes wide as he understood what he was saying. He formed a golem with the replicated seals and named it Katten. Paper golem. Naruto's first test was almost perfect, but he realized that he could not inject chakra into the beast, as his chakra would activate the seals and would reduce the training ground to ashes. So Naruto decided that since the chakra was needed to feed the golem, he would replace half of the seals with fire-drained seals. In this way, when these are activated, the fire-drained seals would also be activated, thus draining all the fire-emitting seals. When he wanted to expel the fire from these seals, he would simply shout, Fuin Kai, to release the fire inside the seals. Once Naruto figured it out and achieved the perfect balance, his experiment worked perfectly. He tried it with all the basic elements and some sub-elements, such as ice and scorching. But since he didn't have much practice with scorching, he just focused on the ice golem, and everything came out to order by mouth. Flashback Kai. Konan eyed the golem warily as he ran towards her. While considering his options, an idea occurred to him. A piece of paper fell out of Konan's arms while he was preparing his technique. PP. Kadnoken and Bara. Paper cutting sword right. With the new double-edged blade, Konan cut the golem, and all the flames that were going to come out were absorbed by the blade. Then, Konan brandished the weapon again, and released the same amount of flames towards Naruto. However, what didn't count was Naruto's new scream. Raiten. Paper golem? She was paralyzed when a golem hugged her and released the seals, subjecting her to an electric shock. I think this fight is over. What do you think, Konan-sensei? I think you're ready, he said after recovering. You are ready for this sword. This sword is now the paper short sword and has the ability to absorb the 5 basic elements and reflect them towards the opponent. However, it can only absorb up to 20 mid-level jutsus of that rank before you must release the energy. Otherwise, the sword will implode, and all the absorbed energy will be reflected back to you. After that, the sword will never be formed again. Forming it is quite easy. Just form the sword with your paper. Its edge is equal to that of the Kusanagi no Tsurugi and will not be cut by it. Be careful and handle this sword carefully, Konan concluded with a smile. Thank you very much, Konan-sensei. Naruto said as he marveled at the sword. So my training is over. It was an honor to train with you, sensei, and I will be sure to pass on your teachings to someone who is willing to learn from me. Thank you very much, Naruto said with a tear. How long until you have to leave, Naruto-kun? Konan asked. Naruto looked at Ono and shrugged, giving him the number 2. Naruto brightened up and looked at Konan again. We have 2 weeks to go, why? Naruto asked curiously. Konan smiled broadly as he looked at Naruto. I want to introduce the 2 people closest to me, apart from Anzo. Konan smiled and led the trio to the outskirts of the village, where not a single area was covered by rain. This confused Naruto. After all, AIM was known for its relentless torrential rains, so how could there be a part of the village uncovered by the rain? Naruto stopped thinking about it. He simply attributed it to someone must be stopping the rain hard. I had no idea how right he was. Approaching a house, Conan ran to a cabin that looked like just a small hut and knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. The door opened, and Nagato and Yeko looked out. Nagato was a light-skinned boy who was about 5 or 7.5. She had dark crimson hair, her bangs combed in front of her right eye, hiding it from view. But from the visible eye, one could see that his eye was abnormal. It was purple-gray in color, with a wavy pattern of 4 concentric rings around a black pupil. There was no white inside his eye visible. This was the Rinnegan. Yeko was a slightly shorter boy of 5-5, who possessed bright orange hair that stood out in tips. He had bright blue eyes that had an aura of serenity. Both boys were wearing a dark gray headphone short with sleeves that only reached the elbow and a wide lime green border. Both were wearing long-sleeved netted t-shirts underneath with dark gray-black trousers matching their aoris. Suddenly, they smiled and opened the door wide as they escorted the quartet inside. As soon as they entered, Yeko broke the silence. "So, what are you doing here?" Yeko asked with a face it would be. Conan came out of his trance. "Ah yes, I wanted to introduce you to my prodigious student Naruto. He has mastered the Shikigami roll dance and has received my sword," he said while pointing at Naruto. "These are his parents, Akane and Onoro." Instantly, he pointed at them both. The two boys opened their eyes like plates. "Your eyes," they all looked at Naruto as he whispered those words. Those eyes stopped the rain. Nagato and Yeko opened their eyes wide as their brains were working flat out, trying to keep Nagato's secret from coming out. Finally, Nagato relented. "How did you know that?" Nagato asked. "I noticed that the rain had stopped here, and then I felt chakra in your eyes, as well as the same chakra far above us. I just added 2 and 2 together," Naruto replied indifferently. Yeko and Nagato looked at the 7-year-old boy in disbelief. How could a small child possess analytical skills as high as those of an inexperienced June? He was amazing. "Well, these two can only stay for a week, since they have to leave." Conan spoke again. Everyone nodded, and Nagato and Yeko left to prepare the 2 guest rooms for Ono, Naruto, Conan and Akane. A week later, and the trio was on the road again, when they finished saying goodbye to Nagato, Yeko, Anzo and Conan. As the trio moved on, they came to a nice open area. Ono examined the area quickly. "Akane, build a chakra and an invisibility barrier, please. Naruto and I will be training here, and we don't want anyone else to feel the mana emanating from this area," Ono instructed. Akane felt and did as she was told. Ono unveiled Naruto's finished Zambatus from a scroll he was carrying and threw them at him. Naruto got the message and tied them behind his back, while his gaze sharpened and he made a gesture of thanks to his father. "Enobara, this is my first long battle scene. Tell me how I do, please." Ono manifested his copes and prepared them for battle, while Naruto unsheathed both swords, observed them carefully. Before adopting a posture that combined the Munjo, Jimper-yu and Nitter-yu styles. They both looked at Akane and then crossed glances again as Akane raised her hand. "Ahem!" Akane shouted. The two ran forward at high Hounen speeds and collided swords. They both jumped back and, to gain time, prepared their spells verbally. Naruto whispered his spells when an array of arcane spells appeared before him and he screamed, "Draconic White Tornado." From the center of the spell matrix, a white tornado in the shape of a Chinese dragon with red eyes and demonic teeth emerged from the matrix and was sent roaring towards Onoro. Onoro simply sharpened his gaze and uttered a whop, or a word of power. "Have fun." With that simple order, the tornado split in half, impacting both halves against the barrier before dissipating. Ono put the ends of the cup together and a bright light shone. When the light went out, Naruto narrowed his eyes at the sight of the new sword Ono was holding. He was holding the silver sword, Jinto. Ono put the sword at his side, put his other hand on the hilt of the sword, and spoke. "I'm already gone." Ichi. Suchoku, part of drawing the sword. 1. Vertical. The ground beneath Ono was torn as his hand, blurred, drew the sword. A huge wave of wind and energy emerged from the ground and quickly headed towards Naruto. "I don't think so." Jetsuga Tensu. An equally large wave of pure spiritual energy gushed out from the tip of Naruto's left Zanbatsu. Naruto then lunged at Ono at a speed that would make Gai jealous, and collided swords with Ono again. The two started a battle at full speed, so fast that Akane only saw them appear once or twice, and then they faced each other again. Armageddon! Naruto's voice sounded. Dissipate! Ono shouted, and Naruto's black fire surge was extinguished. After several high-speed crashes, Naruto was thrown backwards by a particularly powerful blow from Ono. He sheathed his swords, assumed the form of a dragon, and ran towards Ono once more, his fists illuminated by black rays. Ono squinted his eyes as a purple burst surrounded his fists to counter the lightning. They both collided. Naruto threw a direct punch at Ono's face, which was quickly dodged. Then, like a monkey, Ono used Naruto's arm to swing upside down and put his hands on the ground. Ono pushed himself with his arms and kicked Naruto twice in the face, taking advantage of the momentum to do a backflip and land on his feet. The Jinto shone again when Ono tried to take advantage of his advantage. But Naruto did not let himself be defeated. A scream of Gakken 30. Shito Susansen. He came out of Naruto, and Ono cursed. Kyuso. Ono screamed when he was beaten and nailed to a tree. How did you learn, Kido? Akane Nechen taught me. Naruto flashed a vulpine smile. Ono narrowed her eyes and stared at Akane, who walked away. He was whistling innocently. I wouldn't look away if I were you, father. Sir. Mask of flesh and blood, all creation, flutter, you who bear the name of man. On the blue flame wall, engrave a twin lotus. In the abyss of the conflagration, wait in the distant skies. And 73. Smreen's Makatsui. Ono opened his eyes wide as Naruto released the spell, and the blue flames rushed towards him. He quickly broke free from the spell and jumped just in time to avoid turning into ashes, thanks to the incredibly powerful flame. His wings unfolded with a wash, and launched himself into the air right in front of the sun. He surrounded himself with a purple energy and descended towards Naruto. Dragon Race. Enbara. I know I took it from Pokemon, which is not mine either. Lightning Strike. Enbara. Another one. Naruto was covered in a black lightning bolt with traces of yellow lightning, even more densely encapsulated than his original jutsu. Furious lightning, and he lunged at his father. The two clashed with such ferocity and power that many civilians would die of heart attacks just by witnessing it. It really seemed like a clash of the gods. The purple and the yellow bar black intermingled, creating a ball of pure energy that got bigger and bigger the longer they collided. Akane just sat there, amazed at the amount of power being generated. It was certainly enough to destroy a small village. Soon, the energy ball shrank and directed its energy towards the smaller of the two, and the small figure, Naruto, was thrown out of the energy sphere and crashed into the lake on the other side of the field. Ono landed and spoke. One more attack to decide the winner, Naruto. Naruto appeared in front of him, with Zanbatsu unsheathed, looking pretty good, with some burns from the impact of the energy ball that were already healing quickly. Of course. Both of them closed their eyes as they saw spell arrays appear around them. Suddenly, both pairs of eyes suddenly opened. Naruto shouted, Aramajaden Norik. Thousands of black and white dragons emerged from the matrices surrounding Naruto and combined to form a gigantic dragon, twice the size of Akane in her full Kumi form. The dragon was completely black, with white tattoos and white eyes with a thin black pupil in the center. Ono screamed, Rigno Kamino Rikayamu. The clouds opened to reveal another dragon, the same size as Naruto's. This dragon was a dark purple with triangular scales that rippled as it descended towards the dragon that Naruto had summoned. This dragon was also a Chinese dragon with piercing black eyes and a thin white pupil, a stark contrast to the eyes of the dragon that Naruto had created. The two dragons flew towards each other and collided, their bodies parallel to the ground, so that the dragon that one of them would crash into the creator of the first one. Shooting a beam wider than them, the explosion was blinding, but as it calmed down, a cry of pain was heard. The thump of a body and the dragons disappeared. Naruto had lost. He fought bravely and effectively. It is worthy of admiration. but he still needs a lot more training to force you to spend as much mana as me on Yuki in a fight," Akane said as she healed the unconscious dragon. "He did a great job. When I wake up, we will resume our journey," Ono said as she surveyed the completely devastated battle scene. Akane finished healing Naruto, carried him on her shoulders, and started talking again. "What is our next destination?" "Iwagakure no Sarto," Onoro said. "He will love being there. I have heard that they have two Hinchiriki. One is expert in futon, steam release boiling bar. The other is an expert in yoten, lava bar magma release. They also have Bakuton, explosion release, and a Sheikuten user, abrasion release. They have a lot to offer. Indeed, let's not forget that the Tsuchikage also uses the dust or Hinton element," Onoto said as he reflected on all the training Naruto would have to perform there. "Damn it, what hit me?" Naruto said, waking up on Akane's shoulder. "I will if you curse again," Akane said menacingly. "Anyway, we're on our way to Iwagakure no Sarto. If you can walk, I'll take you down." "Hello? I can walk," Naruto said. "Well, then let's get to work." Once again, the three of them set off for Iwa. The Iwa gate. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" shouted a man in red armor next to an old man who, oddly enough, had pure crimson hair. Not a single gray hair was visible to him. They both adopted a fighting stance, as did Naruto, Akane, and Naruto. Everyone's gaze sharpened as they rushed into battle. "Last time, and what is our next destination?" "Iwagakure no Sato," Onoro said. "He will love being there. I have heard that they have two Hinchiriki. One is expert in futon, steam release boiling bar. The other is an expert in yoten, lava bar magma release. They also have Bakuton, liberation, explosion release, and a Sheikuten user, abrasion release. They have a lot to offer." "That's right. Let's not forget that the Tsuchikage also uses the powder or Hinton element," Onoto said as he pondered all the torque training Naruto would have to perform there. "Damn it, what hit me?" Naruto said, waking up on Akane's shoulder. "I will if you curse again," Akane said menacingly. "Anyway, we're on our way to Iwagakure no Sato. If you can walk, I'll take you down." "Hello. I can walk," Naruto said. "Well, then let's get to work." Once again, the three of them set off for Iwa. The Iwa gate. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" shouted a man in red armor next to an old man who, oddly enough, had pure crimson hair. Not a single gray hair could be found on him. They both adopted a fighting stance, as did Naruto, Akane, and Naruto. Everyone's eyes sharpened as they rushed into battle. At that moment, the scene became blurred, and three words appeared at the bottom of the scene. "To be continued." "Present and..." As the five collided, a question popped into Naruto's mind. When the five separated, Naruto abandoned his battle stance and spoke. "Who are you two, and why are you attacking us?" With those words, Ono and Akane also slid out of their positions. They got a good look at the two who were still ready to fight. On the left was a huge man, easily a head taller than Inouro himself. The man was 6'8" and was wearing a red armor with a red windbreaker, conical straw hat. On top of his armor, he wore a black jacket with the sleeves torn off. Under the armor that covers the lower half of his face, he wears a white cloth that covers the sides of his head. Under the house, he wears his forehead protector on a black cloth under the white one. He also wears a bronze-colored ring over his armor. He has light brown eyes and carries an oven on his back. This was the Hinchiriki of Kunku, the Gobi. On the right, there was a man of about 1.85 m, red-haired, with a mustache and a beard that tapered to a point. He wore a large headdress composed of a three-pointed crest in the form of a crown, which housed his frontal protector. Firm Iwagakure, a ring, and a prominent piece of black armor that ran down his cheeks and the bridge of his nose. He was wearing a light, red long-sleeved shirt and pants with a mesh shirt and a tight-fitting black suit underneath, along with calf-length sandals. Around the waist, she wore a high-waisted brown sash with a bag in front and armored lapels that fell on the sides. This was Son Goku's Hinchiriki, the Jambi. I am an Hinchiriki of the Gobi, and protector of Iwa. The giant battleship spoke. I am Rumsi, Hinchiriki of the Yambi, and protector of Iwa. Who are you? Asked the red-haired man. This is Naruto, my son, and my husband Onoyo, and I am a Kane. We are simply here to take refuge in Iwa and enter our son into their academy for the 3rd year. Akane spoke with her political tone. The two Hinchirikis looked at each other, nodded, and asked the trio to be followed by the Tsuchikaige, our Nintendenal Noki. Tsuchikaige and Hinton office. Genka Yakuri no Jutsu. A voice sounded from inside the room. Cubic variant. When the door opened, the 5 saw what caused the explosion. A little man had shot a jutsu at his paperwork desk. Interestingly, everything in the room except his desk was destroyed by the jutsu. No. Damn paperwork. The little man shouted. The office of each cage, and, instantly, all the cages of the elemental nations sneezed, spilling paperwork all over the floor. Location office and Katten. Karyuenden. An old man screamed as a huge fireball crashed into his desk full of papers. The office of Reikaikage and Reiten no Yora. A dark-skinned, muscular man shouted as he pounded his paperwork desk with his lightning-wrapped fist. The Mizukage and Coral Palm office. A small child screamed as he banged his hand on the paperwork desk, and a huge coral field emerged. The office of the Golden Dust Hunt and Tsunami. A man of medium height and brown hair shouted as black circles appeared around his eyes. And a wave of golden dust crashed against his paperwork desk. Damn it! They shout the 5 cages to the Uniso. Tsuchikaige's office, and after the Noki finished his speech about paperwork, the office was miraculously repaired. And instead of his usual pile of papers, there was a pile 3 times as big. The quintet observed the old man and noticed his appearance. The Noki was an elderly man, and very short, with a triangular beard and a mustache with angular corners, a big red nose and bushy eyebrows. The top of his head was completely bald, although he had long white hair in the lower half, styled in a traditional Chanmage cut, the back of which was tied with a yellow ribbon in a bun. Noki was wearing a green and yellow coat with a red collar. Underneath, he was wearing the traditional Iwagakure outfit, consisting of bulletproof vest and mesh armor. However, he had both sleeves of his shirt, but retained the single flap on the right side. Besides, he was wearing sandals. Mom, Noki said as she finally noticed the 5 visitors. What do they want? After explaining the situation to them, the quintet set out on their way. Noki looked at the stack of papers she had to fill out and sighed. Unfortunately, that was it. All it took for the papers to turn over and try to bury him. However, Noki tried to catch a random log in a corner, and it got buried. Thank you, and I praise you, oh, wonderful log. Your help has saved me from a fate I wouldn't wish on anyone. I'm sorry it turned out that way. Noki bowed her head in reverence at the fallen log. Another part of Iwai. Roar. A huge beast roared as it lashed a house with its flaming fists, while villagers waved their arms and fled despondently. He was a 2.4-meter tall demon with red skin. He had flames covering his hands and feet like manes. His face was humanoid, just like the rest of his body, and he was also engulfed in orange flames. But underneath the flames there was orange hair. 2 horns protruded from one side of the demon's face, just above his pointed ears. Blue-green and gold-colored bracelets covered her arms, and a similarly colored loincloth hung from her waist. Red gems adorned both the bracelets and the loincloth, and under this was a tail with a flame sprouting from the edge. His hooves were also crowned with flames. 1. The great beast looked around before setting his sights on the academy. Near the academy, at the same time, and... So this is the academy I'll be attending in 4 days, huh? Naruto said in an impressed voice. It's pretty big. True to his words, the academy was big, even gigantic, much bigger than Kumo and Kiri's. However, while Naruto admired the academy, Akane and Ono sensed something very powerful. Akane's eyes widened, and Ono's narrowed. They closed up when the demon charged at the trio, and they were a little confused, when he stopped his attack about 20 meters away. Interesting, 2 dragons and a kitsune. From what my senses tell me, the child used to be human, and the woman was the Kumi. How interesting. It was heard. The devil's hoarse voice. The flames encapsulated Akane's entire being, and her hybrid demon and human form was revealed. You have a lot of daring coming here, and Frit, demonic representation of the fire element. The demonic Yuki saturated Akane's voice and gave her a much more terrifying aura. As he gathered the Yuki, and Fritz shivered slightly, imperceptible to most. But this trio wasn't the majority, they were the best, and they saw him flinch right away. Be that as it may, I'm not stupid enough to fight you even with 4 tails of Yuki, and by the look of the dragon. Purple-headed, he's stronger than you, much stronger. However, I will put the boy to the test, and if he wins, I will serve him, and he will win a small prize if you so desire. The trio nodded, and Naruto took a step forward. The mana gushed out of the big head as their tails, wings and horns expanded. And Frit opened his eyes wide at the huge amount of mana, but he knew it wasn't like that. The guy still can't control that much mana, interesting evolution. No wonder, Naruto started the fight with arcane language, and a large white seal matrix appeared in front of him. Flame Desperado. Naruto broke through the matrix and emerged from his new special armor. He was wearing a black and white armor with a pure obsidian lion helmet on his head and white flames around his arms. He rushed at Ifrit at high speed, and Ifrit responded with a strong blow on his hands, making all the flames covering him turn blue. And those surrounding his hands glow with blue flames, cough. He also threw himself at the 7-year-old boy. They collided with a shock wave that lifted the dust into the air. The black and white flames met the blue ones in a power struggle, in which Naruto was losing quickly, so he released the 5th seal of his muscle pressure, leaving only 1. In an attempt to overpower Ifrit. He made it. Naruto pushed Ifrit backwards, enough to fall to the ground, and landed a right punch to his stomach, throwing him backwards, opening a trench in the ground. Nice shot, kid, but it won't be enough to knock me down, so get ready. He shouted the last part, while throwing fireballs twice the size of Naruto. Naruto opened his eyes wide as he beckoned with his hands, at the speed of an average jounin. Sutin, Swiridin. A large water dragon with piercing red eyes emerged from nowhere and pounced on the demon at high speed, shattering the fireballs undeterred. And Fritz just made a sneer, jumped in the air, and pounced on the water dragon's head with a blue fist. An eruption of steam covered the battlefield. Banging and punching were heard as the steam dissipated. They were both in a bad position. Naruto crouched to the ground as a white aura gushed from his fist. Ryus and Ken. N-bar so someone can tell me from where. That's coming, I'll give you a digital cookie. Q. The white aura was formed in several rays of luminous energy that fell on Ifrit. Blue infernal shield. A huge tornado of blue flames erupted around Ifrit, preventing him from seeing, but also protecting him from Naruto's Ryus and Ken. When the flames were extinguished, the two engaged in an intense combat again. They became heated. Nothing. They fought until a particularly powerful Suiryuden aimed at the ground separated them. Shh! A sword appeared in Naruto's hand while he was waving his tail with foul. I'm not ready, but this will be at a standstill if I don't use it. My ninja skills are practically useless against him. Here goes. Naruto summoned an incomplete version of the realm of nothingness, the ultimate ability a swordsman can use, and hoped for the best. Mizuchi, Naruto whispered. Naruto disappeared and reappeared on the other side of Ifrit, stopping completely. Coming out of his stance, he sheathed the sword that Ifrit didn't even know was unsheathed, and, as he slid down to the Tsuba, Naruto withdrew one hand, pushed his hair away from his eyes and sheathed the sword with the other with an audible click. And Frid screamed in pain at the sight of several cuts and stab wounds on his body, and collapsed to the ground, defeated. However, Naruto also collapsed. The exhaustion of using the incomplete technique and waging an hour-long battle with Ifrit affected him. So powerful for such a young man. And resist and still win. You are truly deserving of my help and my gloves. Now I will accompany you on your journey. Ifrit's voice showed him amazement and admiration as he spoke. How will I explain that a 2.4-meter demon will accompany me to the academy? Naruto asked. You didn't really think that he didn't have a human form, did you? Why? ****. Well, before I switch to that shape, I'll tell you what my gauntlets do. They allow you to ascend to a yo-yo hybrid and much more control over the flames. They also increase physical abilities by a wide margin. You also gain control over external flames that are not yours, as long as the flames are not stronger than yours. All right. Naruto nodded. Oh, Naruto, you still have to sign the dragon contract I gave you, the salamander one he gave you. Anzo before going to Suna, and we have to find you a third party, preferably other than the foxes, because apart from Akane, there are no combat foxes and you are a warrior, Ono stated. Naruto nodded once more and got up from the ground as flames surrounded Akane and Frit as they regained their human form. And Frick looked like a 7-year-old red-haired boy with piercing and slightly bright orange eyes with torn pupils. He was wearing a sky blue shirt with gold sleeves and 2 ruby earrings. She was also wearing black shorts that complemented her dark chocolate-colored skin. He was about 1.43 m tall, a little taller than the average boys in Naruto's Kumo class, and about 2.5 centimeters taller than Naruto himself. She had gold and blue piercings on the upper half of both ears and a small piercing on her lower lip. Like Onoyo, he shone with majesty, well, with all the majesty a demon could have, and he seemed ready for the journey. He was holding a pair of gauntlets that he handed to Naruto, and when the young dragon touched them, fire came out, and the gauntlets disappeared, and on Naruto's arms there was a small tattoo of each gauntlet. What are gauntlets and what do they do? Naruto asked. Wait a second. And Fred cleared his throat. Much better. As I was saying, the gauntlets allow a better control of the fire, and allow to control any fire weaker than one's own. Naruto nodded and gasped, amazed. What possibilities? Naruto thought. Okay, let's go to the apartment that the Tsuchikage gave us. The group nodded and followed Onoro, but suddenly, causing the group to comically crash into him. Huh. Does anyone know where the apartment is? Everyone sweated. Shit. It was the collective thought. Damn it. They are very fast. Shit. An 8-year-old girl with onyx hair came running towards the quartet. He stopped in front of the group, panting heavily. As she got up, the 2 dragons and the 2 demons watched her intently. He had long black hair that reached down his back, in a bar. I know I wore my hair short in the manga and anime, but it's a fanfiction of mine for a reason, and big pink eyes and no pupils. She was wearing a short red blouse that showed her torso a little and pink jeans to match her eyes. She was a little shorter than Naruto and Ifrit in his childhood form. She was 1.45 m tall. I'm here to show you the apartment that the Noki Jiji gave you. Oh, and by the way, I'm Kurotsuchi. Ajime Mazite. The group nodded and began the presentations. I'm Ifrit, a demon. The red-haired demon spoke indifferently. I'm Akane, the Kubino Kitsune. The female demon spoke. I am Onoro, the Ryujin, said the tall chocolate dragon. And I am Naruto, we are all Uzumakis, and I am a dragon, or a young dragon. Ajime Mazite, declared the white-haired dragon. Kurotsuchi nodded, looked around, shook hands with each of them, and fainted. The group sweated a drop. Damn, I thought she was good, but I guess the lack of noise from her vocal cords should have given it away. And now how are we going to get to the apartment? I guess we'll have to wait for her to wake up, Akane said, almost exasperated. No, we won't. Sutin. Miserapa. He shouted no while throwing a water ball at Kurotsuchi in the face. She woke up with a shiver and cursed with a tongue that would have made Teyui tremble. Soon the group was on their way. When they arrived at the apartment, they said goodbye and each took his own way. 4 went to sleep, and 1 returned to the cage tower. Time jump, 4 days later, at the academy, and upon arriving at the academy, Naruto bumped into Kurotsuchi. Upon greeting them, Kurotsuchi instantly noticed Ifrit's absence and asked about it. Naru, where is Ifrit? He doesn't want to come to the academy, so he'll stay at home when I go. It will only appear when traveling. Kurotsuchi nodded, understanding. So, Kuro-chan, what kind of jutsus do you know? And I know you know some, being the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage. Kurotsuchi blushed furiously upon hearing the nickname. Although Naruto didn't realize anything, he would be Naruto without his indifference. Well, I have the ability to use fire, earth, and lava jutsus. Naruto was stunned. Anyone who can use lava jutsus. Big ones. Great, I can use paper jutsus and several fire ones. But I want to be able to use them as lava, Naruto said in amazement. Really? Maybe Roshio Hisan can teach you. He taught me a little, Kurotsuchi replied. Finally, they entered and looked in front, seeing their teacher enter through the door. The man was approximately 1.80 m tall, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that reached to his tailbone. She was wearing long bangs that covered her left eye and reached up to her face. He was wearing the standard bulletproof and Bachunin vest with a black V-neck underneath and light green pants with bandages on the ankles. He wore his idolate around his neck. Hello everyone, my name is Deidara, and the new student is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto, stand up and take a bow. Naruto obeyed. Then he sat down and started talking to Kurotsuchi. As she started her lesson, Deidara noticed that two students were not paying any attention to her. Guess who it is? Naruto-kun, Kurotsuchi-chan, will you pay attention to me? When he did not receive attention, a mark formed on his forehead. Naruto? Kurotsuchi, turn around. He screamed as he threw an explosive clay bird at them. Without even turning his head or averting his gaze, Naruto reached out and caught the bird by the wings. The lightning chakra sparkled around his hand, overriding the earth chakra in the small bird-shaped construction. Deidara opened her eyes wide. Not only to catch the bird flying at the speed of a chunin, but to realize that I had earth chakra, and nullify it with enough manipulation of the lightning chakra. This is not an academy at all, not even a genin-level boy, Deidara thought. Do you need anything, Deidara-sensei? Naruto asked innocently. No, Naruto-kun, just. Please, pay attention, Deidara stammered, still in shock. Can you meet me after class? The two nodded and Deidara interpreted it as the signal to resume her class. 2 hours later, and very well, I want everyone to form a line and channel chakra on these pieces of paper, okay? Deidara said. The class nodded and formed a line. As each student channeled their chakra into the pieces of paper Deidara-sensei handed to them, the line soon progressed. To a bright blue-haired boy who was about 1.43 m tall, about the same height as Ifrit. Kenta, it's your turn. Kenta took the card from her teacher's hand. By channeling his chakra into her, he caused a huge commotion in, well, everyone. The paper crumbled, turning into dust, but it solidified and generated many sparks. Then he visibly exploded. Kenta, who are your parents? Deidara asked. Kenta felt instantly shy. This, Pakura and Shitaru as serve. Deidara's eyes threatened to pop out of their sockets. No way, the best users of the scorching and explosive versions that have ever existed. It's not bad that they passed away. The class looked at them with amazement and sadness. Kenta also looked down sadly. See you after class with Naruto and Kurotsuchi. Kenta nodded and Deidara walked over to Naruto. Naruto took the card and channeled chakra into it, and the results were, to say the least, amazing. In addition to their old affinities, which surprised the class anyway, the remnants of the letter exploded with amazing force. One more reason to meet up after class, Naruto. The letter was then addressed to Kurotsuchi, and, once again, the result was amazing. A blue flame erupted from the letter, and the other half turned to dust. When he finished, both parts of the letter turned into lava. Damn it! Deidara basically summed up everyone's thoughts. After class I. After leaving the academy with a third member, Naruto, Kurotsuchi and Kenta headed to Training Camp 22. The meeting place Deidara specified. When they got there were a lot of people. There was the Tsuchikage, Rosie, and Deidara, and a newcomer. All right, you three. Due to their skills, we have decided to form a fast-growing, fast-power and forceful team. Kenta, Kurotsuchi and Naruto have been selected as a team personally trained by us and the Tsuchikage. Their authority in this village will be equivalent to that of a Hounen, and they will answer only to the Tsuchikage. Naruto will get lessons from all of us because of his versatility. Kurotsuchi will receive Tsuchikage-sama, Razasan, and Ansen classes. Kenta will be taught by the new Master Garrison, Captain of the Explosive Corps, Tsuchikage-sama, and me. Naruto, Kenta, what are your fighting styles? Deidara asked, lecturing and questioning. Long reach, whispered Kenta, still a little astonished and moved. Moved by passion. An intimate encounter, honey. Naruto shouted. Everyone present in the clearing got a drop of sweat. Okay, so Gar Y will be Naruto's main explosives throwing sensei, as he is an up-close explosives expert. And a master of the landmine fist style, a style that has given him almost as much recognition as the Tsunade herself. Kenta will mainly receive my classes, as I am a master in long-range explosives.